The sound of the buzzer marked the end of sixth period, but for Malik Thompson, it was just the beginning of another quiet war. He stood near the back of room 314, clutching a half-worn notebook filled with equations and scribbled diagrams. His fingers were smudged with ink, his hoodie too thin for the November chill seeping through the cracked windows of Southridge High School. Mr. Patterson, the school's head science teacher, stood by the whiteboard, erasing notes from the day's chemistry lesson. Malik took a step forward. "Mr. Patterson? Can I talk to you for a sec?" The older man didn't turn around. "Make it quick. I've got a meeting." Malik hesitated, then handed over the notebook. "It's about the Science Futures Program application. I finished my independent study. The encryption patterns I told you about, I've been running them through simulations. I think there's something real here. Something big." Patterson skimmed a few pages before handing it back. His voice was flat, unmoved. "Malik, look. I'll be honest with you. This kind of thing, quantum cryptography, theoretical algorithms, it's not really for someone like you." Malik blinked. "Someone like me?" Patterson sighed, like he didn't want to explain the obvious. "I mean, you struggle in class. You don't have the math scores. You're passionate, sure, but this field is competitive. It's not about dreams, it's about credentials. You should think about more realistic options. Maybe trade school." The words hit Malik harder than he expected. Not because they were unfamiliar, but because they were expected. Again. He'd heard versions of this line since sixth grade, from teachers, guidance counselors, even his own family. And every time, it scraped at something raw inside him. "But Malik," Patterson interrupted, finally meeting his eyes, "you're just not cut out for this." The room suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the overhead lights, the creak of the hallway lockers, the sound of Malik's breath catching in his throat, they all merged into a slow burn inside his chest. He took the notebook back without a word and left the room. Outside, the wind was cruel, snatching at the pages of his work. He hugged the notebook to his chest and walked toward the bus stop. The south side of Chicago in late fall was all gray skies and colder stairs. Behind him, the brick buildings loomed like they were leaning in, listening to his doubt. He pulled out his phone and clicked on YouTube, searching for something to take his mind off things. Then paused, scrolling past a motivational video with a thumbnail that read, "Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?" Malik read the caption twice. Then locked his phone. He didn't need a video to tell him what pushed him forward. He already knew. Malik lived in a one-bedroom apartment with his mom and little sister, Layla. The walls were thin, and privacy was a myth. When he got home, his mom was on her feet, frying plantains and fish, her uniform stained with fryer grease from the second job she worked at Denny's. "You're home early," she said without turning around. "Yeah." Patterson said, "I'm not smart enough for the science program." Her silence said more than any response. She lowered the heat and looked at him, her eyes tired but warm. "Did he now?" she said slowly. Malik nodded. "He told me I should consider trade school." She wiped her hands on a towel. "And what do you think?" "I think he doesn't see me." "None of them do." She walked over and cupped his face. "People only see what their eyes are trained to look for. Some eyes weren't trained to see brilliance when it's wrapped in brown skin and old sneakers." He cracked a smile, just barely. "Thanks, Mom." She nodded toward his room. "Now go do that thing you do at that keyboard. That code stuff. Make the world wrong." Malik's room was half bedroom, half science lab. A thrifted desk held his old laptop, its screen cracked but still functional. Beside it sat books he'd checked out from the local library, titles like The Mathematics of Encryption, Quantum Tunneling, and patterns in chaos. Every inch of wall space was covered in diagrams, post-its, and hand-scribbled formulas. His code cave, as Jason liked to call it. Jason. His best friend since second grade. Lately, though, they hadn't hung out as much. Jason had started running errands for some older guys in the neighborhood, guys with chains and guns and money Malik knew came with a price. His phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Yo. Slide by Lil Tony's later. We got a job. Cash. Malik stared at the screen, thumbs hovering. Can't. Working on something. A reply came fast. Come on, man. That science stuff ain't gonna save you. Malik didn't reply. Instead, he pulled up the encrypted file he'd been working on for weeks, sequence Delta 13. It wasn't just random code. It was ancient. Buried in a research paper from 1979 that only resurfaced because Malik had found it in a digital archive. A sequence of oscillations that seemed to defy standard pattern recognition models. Every attempt to decode it had failed. Until Malik found something strange. The numbers aligned perfectly with an obscure quantum harmonic theory only mentioned in 2 academic journals. He didn't have the credentials. He didn't have a PhD. But what he did have was time, hunger, and an obsession with breaking things wide open. He looked back at the screen. The pattern blinked like a heartbeat. Unsolved. Untouched. Until now. At 3:12 a.m., Malik jolted upright. His laptop was overheating, the fan spinning like a jet engine. On screen, a new line of output appeared, one that hadn't shown up before. Sequence matched, 99.87% correlation. His heart pounded. He double-checked the inputs. Then ran the test again. Same result. He wasn't hallucinating. He'd cracked the first stage of the encryption. The pattern was real. And if he was right, it wasn't just a cipher. It was a framework. A possible bridge between time-based encryption and quantum predictability. A new frontier. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, mouth slightly open. Holy crap. No one was going to believe him. Not yet. But they would. Malik didn't sleep much that night. The next day, he walked through the same cracked hallway of Southridge High, the sounds of kids chattering and lockers slamming drowning out the thoughts racing through his head. He wasn't sure what he expected when he cracked the code. A breakthrough, sure. But this was something far bigger than he could have imagined. And yet, as he walked into his next class, the reality of it all hit him like a ton of bricks. He still had the same clothes, the same status, the same old neighborhood. That code, no matter how groundbreaking, wasn't going to change his zip code. It wasn't going to change the fact that no one would listen to him. Not without the right pedigree, the right background. And Malik knew, deep down, that it was never about his talent. It was about the system stacked against him, the chains that bound people like him to the ground before they ever had a chance to fly. Hey, Malik. Jason's voice broke through his thoughts as he walked into the classroom. Jason was a year younger than Malik but had always seemed older. He had the same street-smart edge, the same fire, but with a different kind of hunger, a hunger Malik wasn't sure he wanted to feed. Malik tried to force a smile. What's up? Man, you been acting weird lately. You good? Jason asked, his eyes narrowing slightly, a casual grin spreading across his face. Yeah, just thinking, Malik said, slumping into his desk. He didn't want to get into it. Not yet. Not with Jason. You sure? 'Cause, you know, I got a job coming up. Something big. You in? Jason's voice dropped low, and Malik could hear the familiar, persuasive tone creeping into his words. Jason was always trying to pull Malik into the kind of life Malik had sworn off, small-time hustles, quick money, risks that might lead to bigger problems. I'm good, Malik said, shaking his head. I've got other things to focus on right now. Jason raised an eyebrow. Other things? Man, you always say that. What, some more of that computer stuff? Ain't no future in that. Malik clenched his jaw. You don't get it, Jason. It's not just computer stuff. This could change everything. He stopped himself before the words spilled out. He couldn't tell Jason what he'd found, not yet. Jason shrugged. Whatever, man. Just don't get caught up in that schoolwork. You know where the real money's at. He slapped Malik's back and walked off, leaving Malik to stew in the classroom. For a second, Malik thought about what Jason had said. Maybe Jason was right. Maybe a guy like Malik, with his family, his neighborhood, and his past, would never get a real shot at a future that didn't come with a price tag. The bell rang. Malik grabbed his bag and walked out, but his thoughts were still stuck on the same thing. His breakthrough. It was too big to ignore, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was all for nothing. Who would listen to a kid from the South Side? The South Side of Chicago had a way of teaching you to survive. Malik had learned early that ambition wasn't always enough. The odds were stacked high against people like him. In school, his grades weren't terrible, but they weren't exceptional either. His teachers looked at him as a good enough student, but they never expected much. They saw him as another statistic, another kid who'd eventually fall into the same trap as so many others. They were right about one thing, Malik wasn't like the others. But how could he prove it when every system seemed designed to keep him from succeeding? It wasn't just his teachers. It was the streets. The temptation to take the easy way out, to make quick cash, to hustle and grind his way up through the world that never gave him a fair shot. He had family members who'd gone down that road, who were still trapped in that cycle. His older brother, Devin, had been locked up for nearly 3 years now. His uncle, Leroy, had a string of felonies that kept him from holding down a real job. Malik loved them both, but he knew what that life led to. Malik's mom, though, she had always been different. She worked 2 jobs, one as a waitress at Denny's and another cleaning houses on weekends. She was the one who constantly reminded Malik that there was more to life than the cycle he was born into. You've got to dream, baby. Dream big and fight for it, she'd say, her voice always steady, even when her hands were tired from scrubbing floors and serving endless plates of pancakes. He hadn't told her about the breakthrough with the code yet. She wouldn't understand the technical stuff, but she would understand the fire behind it. She always understood him, even when he couldn't quite put his thoughts into words. The day passed in a blur. Malik didn't speak much in class, barely even noticed when the bell rang. The only thing he could focus on was the theory that had consumed him. How many people had tried and failed to crack this code before him? And yet here he was, a high school kid with no formal education in advanced mathematics, about to blow the whole thing wide open. But would anyone listen? Would anyone believe him? At home that evening, Malik pulled up the research paper again. He had it saved on his laptop, tucked away in a folder named Delta 13. The numbers on the screen flickered as he reviewed the sequence once more. He was getting closer to something, he could feel it. He just needed more time, more data, more everything. Layla walked into the room, looking up from her homework. You still on that thing? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. You should take a break, Malik. Mom said you're up all night again. He glanced at her, a tired smile creeping onto his face. I can't stop now. Not after I've gotten this far. She tilted her head. Well, I don't know what you're working on, but whatever it is, it's gotta be important. It is, he muttered. I just hope it's enough. Layla raised an eyebrow. You're always thinking, huh? Yeah, he replied. But sometimes, it's the only thing that keeps me going. That night, Malik sat at his desk, staring at the screen, the weight of everything pressing down on him. The code was just numbers, patterns, abstract symbols to most people. But to him, it was more than that. It was his way out. It was his chance to prove them all wrong. It was his chance to prove that the South Side didn't define him. And maybe, just maybe, it was his chance to change the world. The weeks dragged by, and Malik's obsession with the Delta 13 encryption only deepened. He had long since stopped attending group study sessions, and the increasing number of missed classes didn't bother him as much as they used to. What bothered him was the growing realization that his success or failure was going to be decided by the very people who had written him off from the start. But in the dim glow of his room, with its crumpled notes and the clutter of half-finished projects scattered on the floor, Malik felt the weight of something more important than schoolwork. This was bigger. This was his chance. Every line of code, every theory that didn't quite work, all of it led him to this moment where the universe, quietly, almost imperceptibly, seemed to shift, as if the world were waiting for him to find the key that would unlock the future. That Wednesday afternoon, Malik was in the library, squinting at a stack of books and scribbling new patterns in his notebook when the door creaked open. He didn't look up. He'd already spent enough time dealing with the distractions of his peers, and right now, the last thing he wanted was another lecture from his teachers or one of Jason's half-baked offers to make some quick cash. The footsteps grew louder, stopping just behind him. "Mind if I join you?" Malik froze for a moment before lifting his eyes to meet the visitor. It was Mia, one of the few people who'd ever given him a second glance beyond his grades. She was the one who sat across from him in chemistry class, who always helped him with the formulas he didn't quite get, the one who didn't laugh at his questions but answered them without hesitation. Mia's messy brown hair framed her face, and her round glasses perched atop her nose as she scanned his open notebook. "What's all this? You got another one of your crazy theories cooking?" she asked, her voice a mix of amusement and curiosity. Malik sighed, looking at the equations sprawled in front of him. "Something like that. Why don't you ever share these with anyone?" Mia's voice was soft, almost pleading. "You know, you don't have to carry all of this by yourself." "I don't think anyone would understand," he muttered, tapping the page with a pencil. "It's complicated. People are already counting me out. Even Patterson. Especially Patterson." She raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Patterson? He said that?" Malik nodded. "Yeah. He told me I'm not cut out for it. That I don't have the right background, the right grades, or even the right kind of brain." He shook his head, his frustration building. "It's like he sees the color of my skin and just decides I'm not worthy of the same chances as anyone else. Like I'm supposed to just accept that." Mia's face softened. "Malik, that's terrible. But you're not gonna let one guy define you, right?" He chuckled bitterly. "It's not just him. It's everyone. The system. Society. People look at me, and they see what they expect to see. Someone who's not gonna make it. Someone who's gonna end up just like everyone else around here." Mia leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "Then prove them wrong." He met her gaze. "I'm trying. But it's not just about proving them wrong. It's about creating something that matters. Something that can't be ignored." She sat down beside him, crossing her arms. "And what if you don't succeed?" Her question wasn't cruel. It was just honest. "I can't afford to think like that," Malik said, his voice low. "Failure isn't an option. This is my chance. If I crack this code, it'll change everything." Mia was quiet for a moment, and Malik could feel her hesitation in the air between them. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter but tinged with a kind of understanding. "You know, if you do manage to break it, people are going to have a lot of questions. A lot of real questions. Are you ready for that?" Malik swallowed. He hadn't really thought about the aftermath. What if he did succeed? What if the world looked at him, at the kid from the South Side with no credentials, and demanded explanations? What if they wanted him to prove he belonged in a field that hadn't been designed for someone like him? I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted. But I don't think it matters. The moment I cracked that code, when I saw the output, it felt like something huge was at stake. And I can't turn back now. Mia smiled, a mix of sympathy and admiration in her eyes. I don't think you'll ever be able to turn back. The following week passed in a blur of sleepless nights and distractions. Malik barely noticed the holidays creeping up on him. Thanksgiving was a quiet affair at the Thompson household. It always was. The apartment was too small for the extended family, so it was just Malik, his mom, and Layla, eating dinner in front of the TV. As usual, Malik's mind wandered to Delta 13 as he pushed the mashed potatoes around his plate. His mom was telling Layla about her day at work, her voice calm, but Malik heard none of it. All he could think about was the missing piece of the code. The final step. He had to be close. So close. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A message from Jason. Yo, Malik. This gig is gonna change your life. You in or what? Malik hesitated for a second. Then, his thumb hovered over the reply button. I'm good. Not interested. Another text came in almost immediately. Come on, man. You can't be serious. Don't act like you got it all figured out. This is the way out. Malik stared at the words on the screen, feeling the pull. The temptation. It was so easy to say yes, to make a quick buck and walk away. But deep down, he knew that was not his way out. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about rising above. And whatever that took, Malik was ready to pay the price. That night, Malik didn't go to sleep. Not yet. The code was closer than ever before. He wasn't going to let it slip away because of an easy way out. His fingers danced over the keyboard, faster now, as the night stretched on. The screen blinked in time with his heartbeat, the codes and sequences now forming something more solid, more real. He was starting to understand it, piece by piece. And when the last string of digits fell into place, when the final sequence unlocked, the screen lit up with a confirmation. Sequence matched, 100% correlation. Pattern resolved. Malik couldn't breathe. He stared at the screen in disbelief. He'd done it. He'd cracked it. Malik sat frozen in his chair, his eyes locked onto the screen in front of him. The moment he'd been working toward for months, maybe even years, had arrived. His fingers trembled as they hovered over the keyboard. The sequence on the screen was no longer a jumble of cryptic numbers and symbols. It was a solution. A breakthrough. And with it, Malik knew he had just unlocked something far bigger than himself. Sequence matched, 100% correlation. Pattern resolved. The text glowed in front of him, but the weight of what it meant wasn't immediately clear. His heart pounded in his chest. He didn't even know what he was supposed to do next. Should he tell someone? Should he take it to the authorities? The scientists who had been trying to crack this code for decades. Malik was sure it wasn't something that would be taken lightly. The room around him felt suddenly too small. He could feel the walls closing in. The significance of what he'd just done felt heavy, like the pressure of an entire universe pushing down on his shoulders. He wasn't just a kid from the South Side anymore. Malik had become something else, something bigger. But what did that mean for him? A ping broke his trance. His phone buzzed on the desk next to him. He glanced at the screen. It was a message from Mia. You still up? I've been thinking about our conversation earlier. I think you should tell someone. Malik bit his lip. He wasn't sure if he was ready to share this with anyone yet. It wasn't just about telling someone, it was about how they would respond. Would they believe him? Or would they dismiss him the same way everyone else had done his whole life? He quickly typed a reply, careful with his words. I did it, Mia. I cracked the code. But I don't know what to do with it. He stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. The silence that followed was deafening. But when the dots appeared, followed by her quick response, Malik's heart skipped a beat. Are you serious? That's huge, Malik. But I understand why you're scared. You've got to be careful with this. It's not just a school project anymore. You could be looking at a whole new world, but with it comes a price. Malik swallowed hard. A price. He knew what Mia was saying. The world wasn't kind to people like him. It had never been. And now that he had something valuable, something world-changing, he was sure there were people out there who would do anything to get their hands on it. The same people who would tear him down if they had the chance. Later that evening, Malik sat with his mom at the kitchen table, the sound of dishes clinking softly in the background as she cleaned up after dinner. Layla had already gone to bed, and the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Malik's stomach churned. He wanted to tell his mom. He needed to tell her. But how? How could he explain something so huge to her without sounding like he was dreaming too big? His mom glanced up at him, noticing the tension on his face. What's wrong, Malik? You've been quiet all night. He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I did something today. Something big. She set the dish down and gave him her full attention. Big? What do you mean? Malik hesitated. His mom had always been supportive, always encouraged him to follow his dreams. But this was different. This wasn't a school project or a dream of becoming a doctor or a scientist. This was real. Too real. I cracked a code, Mom, he said, his voice steady but his insides a mess of nerves. A code that no one's been able to solve for years. It's huge. For a moment, his mom didn't say anything. Her eyes narrowed, and Malik could almost see the gears turning in her head. Then she sighed, as if she were weighing the situation. Why does it feel like you're holding back, Malik? She asked, her voice soft, but firm. You're not in trouble, are you? No, it's just complicated, Malik admitted. I don't know what to do next. This could change everything. But I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of change. His mom leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. I'm proud of you, Malik. But I'm also worried. You've always been smart, always been capable of more than you give yourself credit for. But the world doesn't always see it that way. There are people who'll take advantage of you. People who'll want to control your discovery. Malik looked up, surprised at how much his mom understood without him needing to explain. I know. That's what I'm scared of. Then be careful, she said, her voice steady. Whatever you do, don't let them take what you've worked for. You've earned this. Malik swallowed. He didn't realize how much he needed to hear those words. Thanks, Mom. I just don't know where to start. I can't do this alone. You're not alone, Malik, she said, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. You never have been. And you won't be now. Her words gave him a bit of comfort, but the weight of the discovery still pressed on him. There was so much at stake. He didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear, things were about to get complicated. The next day at school, Malik couldn't focus. He walked through the halls like he was in a daze, the noise of students around him barely registering. His mind was consumed with the implications of what he had discovered. He had cracked the code, but now what? Who could he trust with this? What if the wrong people found out? As he walked into his final class of the day, his heart sank when he saw Mr. Patterson standing at the front, waiting for the bell to ring. The man who had belittled him for so long, who had told him time and time again that he didn't belong in this world, was still there, still pulling the strings. Malik couldn't shake the feeling that Patterson's words weren't just a passing insult anymore. They were a warning. A reminder of the world that Malik had always lived in, a world where people like him didn't get to dream big. But he wasn't going to let that stop him. Not anymore. As Malik sat down, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was another message from Mia. "You've got this, Malik. But take your time. Don't rush. If you're going to change the world, you need to be sure you're doing it the right way." Malik stared at the message for a moment, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Mia was right. He couldn't let fear drive him. He had to be smart. He had to make his next move count. The world was watching, and now, so was he. Malik spent the next few days wrapped in the weight of his discovery. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he knew about the true power of what he had unlocked. This wasn't just a code anymore, it was a gateway. What lay on the other side of it, he had no idea. But he knew one thing, he had to be careful. The classroom felt suffocating now. Mr. Patterson's voice was just a dull hum in the background as Malik sat in his seat, trying to focus on the lesson. He was there physically, but mentally, his mind was still locked on the code he'd cracked the night before. The bell rang, breaking his reverie. Students piled out of the room, but Malik lingered, staring at the empty whiteboard where Patterson's equations had once seemed so complex, so impossible. Now, they felt trivial. "Malik," a voice broke through his thoughts. He turned around to see Jason standing by the door, a grin on his face. Malik didn't even try to hide the annoyance that flashed across his face. Jason had been persistent in trying to get him involved in his business deals, but Malik wasn't interested anymore. His mind was elsewhere. "Hey, man. I know you've got your head in the books, but I've got a gig that'll make you some real money. You in or not?" Jason's voice had a casual, almost smug tone. Malik took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of the situation settling in again, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was clarity. He didn't need Jason's schemes to get ahead. Not anymore. "I'm good, Jason. I've got something else to focus on." Jason's grin faltered for a moment, his expression shifting to one of confusion. "Something else? What, like, you've got some big project or something?" Malik hesitated. He wasn't about to spill everything to Jason, but there was a certain temptation to tell him, just to see his reaction. Still, he didn't. Instead, he simply nodded. "Yeah. Something big." Jason raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Well, you know where to find me if you change your mind, bro. I don't want to see you stuck in this dead-end school life. There's bigger stuff out there." Malik didn't respond. He just turned away and left the room. The last thing he wanted was to get caught up in the kind of distractions Jason was offering. He was on the verge of something important, something that could change everything. He wasn't about to risk it all for a quick paycheck. The next few days were spent in isolation. Malik's bedroom had become his fortress. The walls around him felt like the only safe place where he could unravel the complexities of the code. But even in his solitude, the questions mounted. What was this code really? Why had it been so elusive for so many years? Was it something so powerful that the world wasn't ready for it? As he dug deeper into the puzzle, it became clear that this wasn't just a random set of encrypted data, it was a key. A key to something far bigger than just solving a scientific or mathematical mystery. By the end of the week, Malik felt like he was staring into the void, with no clear path ahead of him. The deeper he went, the more he realized how much he didn't understand. There were layers to this code, layers that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of what anyone had ever expected. One evening, as Malik was scrolling through a series of related academic papers, he stumbled across a name, Dr. Ethan Carter, a renowned cryptographer. The name stood out because Dr. Carter was known for his work on advanced encryption systems, the very kind Malik was now tinkering with. But what really caught Malik's attention was the list of failed attempts that had been documented, leading to the assumption that this particular encryption was unsolvable. That's when the realization hit him. What if this wasn't just some random encryption? What if this code was a deliberate puzzle, designed to be cracked by someone with a very specific set of skills, someone like him? He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just being the lucky one who cracked it. This wasn't a coincidence. It felt like this code had been waiting for him, that it had somehow found him, and now he was its keyholder. He knew he needed help. He needed to understand this fully. But telling anyone about it, especially someone like Dr. Carter, was risky. What if they thought he was just a kid who had stumbled into something that wasn't his to own? What if they tried to take it from him? Malik didn't sleep much that night. The thoughts swirled endlessly in his mind, pulling him in all directions. He needed to make a decision. Fast. But who could he trust? Who in his life would even begin to understand the magnitude of what he had discovered? The next morning, as Malik walked into school, his phone buzzed in his pocket again. This time, it was a message from Mia. Malik, I've been thinking. This isn't something you should do alone. You need to talk to Dr. Carter. He's the expert. He'll know what this is, and he can help you. Malik read the message 3 times before he even began to think about a response. Mia was right. If anyone could help him make sense of this code, it was Dr. Carter. But reaching out to him wasn't just about asking for help, it was about opening the door to something he wasn't sure he was ready for. What would happen when he handed over the code to someone else? Would they see its potential the way he did? Or would they take it and leave him behind? He stared at the message for what felt like an eternity before he began typing a response. You're right. I need to take the next step. But I'm not sure if I'm ready to let someone else in on it. What if they take it away from me? He hit send and immediately regretted it. His fingers hovered over the phone, as if hoping the message would somehow disappear. But before he could delete it, Mia's response came through. If you don't trust anyone with it, then you're not going to be able to do anything with it. If this is as big as you think it is, you can't carry the weight on your own. You need allies, Malik. Her words stung. The truth of them cut deep, but they were right. He couldn't hide from this forever. And as much as he was scared of what might happen next, the only way forward was to take the leap. Later that afternoon, Malik sat in the library, his phone in hand, the cursor blinking on his screen. He had typed out an email to Dr. Carter a dozen times but hadn't had the courage to hit send. Every word felt like it could change everything. This wasn't just about asking for advice, this was about putting himself on the map. But if he was going to do this, he had to be ready for the consequences. If the code was really what he thought it was, the world would never look at him the same way again. And the hidden world he had just entered would never be the same either. Malik sat at the library table, his eyes glued to the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as his thoughts raced. The email to Dr. Carter had been written, rewritten, and edited a dozen times. Each time, it seemed like he was about to send it, only to hesitate at the last moment, wondering if he was making the right choice. His phone buzzed again, snapping him from his trance. Mia's message appeared at the top of the screen. Malik, what's going on? Have you emailed him yet? The pressure built. She had been relentless, reminding him that this was his chance to take the next step. And every time he delayed, it felt like an opportunity slipping away. He glanced around the library, ensuring no one was watching. It wasn't that he was afraid of people finding out what he was doing. It was just that he wasn't sure he was ready for what might come after this. What if Dr. Carter dismisses him? What if the code was just a fluke? The questions loomed large in his mind, but he couldn't hide from them forever. This wasn't just some school project. This was bigger than anything he had ever known, and there was no going back. With a deep breath, Malik hit send. The moment the email was on its way, he felt a rush of adrenaline. But with it came the weight of realization. This was the first step into a world that had been hidden from him, and it wasn't going to be an easy journey. The next morning, as Malik sat in class, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unfamiliar number. "Hello?" Malik said, his voice tight. "Malik," a calm, authoritative voice responded. "This is Dr. Ethan Carter. I received your email." Malik's heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect a reply so quickly. Was this a mistake? Did he really want to do this? Yes, Dr. Carter. Thank you for responding so fast," Malik stammered, feeling a lump in his throat. "I've been working on something. I think it's important." "I've looked through your email," Dr. Carter continued. "You're not the first to crack that code, Malik. But what you've done, well, that's impressive. I want to help you, but you need to understand that this is dangerous." Malik's pulse quickened. Dangerous? Was he ready for this? He wasn't sure. I don't understand, Dr. Carter. What do you mean, dangerous? Malik asked. Dr. Carter sighed on the other end of the line. Let me explain. That code isn't just some random encryption. It's part of something much bigger. Something that's been hidden for years, and for good reason. There are people out there who want to control this. You need to be careful, Malik. You're stepping into a world you can't possibly understand yet. Malik's mind was spinning. Was this a joke? What was he stepping into? I don't know if I'm ready for all this, Malik whispered. I just cracked the code. I didn't know it was this big. That's exactly why you need guidance, Dr. Carter said firmly. I can help you, but we need to meet. This isn't something you should be handling on your own. Malik couldn't believe what he was hearing. Dr. Carter wasn't just dismissing him like everyone else had. He wasn't telling him to stop, to move on to something easier. Instead, he was offering help, and more than that, he was suggesting that there were forces at play far beyond anything Malik had imagined. After a few more details were exchanged, Malik agreed to meet Dr. Carter the next day at a small cafe in the city. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew this was the beginning of something irreversible. The next afternoon, Malik walked into the cafe, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never felt so out of place. The cafe was sleek, with white marble tables and modern decor. There was an air of quiet sophistication in the room, but it felt foreign to him. He was used to the bustling streets of his neighborhood, the noise of life surrounding him. This place felt sterile, like something he was never meant to be a part of. He scanned the room, and then he saw him, Dr. Ethan Carter, sitting at a table near the back. He was older, probably in his mid-40s, with sharp features and an air of quiet confidence that Malik couldn't quite place. He was dressed in a simple dark suit, his eyes hidden behind glasses, but there was something in his posture that made him seem different, like he knew more than he was letting on. Malik, right? Dr. Carter said, standing as Malik approached. Yeah, that's me. Malik tried to force a smile, but it came out more nervous than he had intended. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Dr. Carter nodded and gestured for Malik to sit down. Please, have a seat. We have a lot to discuss. As Malik sat down across from him, he suddenly felt small. The weight of what he had uncovered felt like it was pressing in on him, but he didn't know how to explain it. All he had was the code, a few cryptic messages, and a gut feeling that he was about to be pulled into something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Tell me everything, Dr. Carter said, his voice calm and measured. Malik took a deep breath. He knew there was no turning back now. I cracked a code. It's been on my mind for months, and I just couldn't let it go. It started as a school project, but it's more than that. I think it's part of something important, something that's been hidden for a long time. Dr. Carter leaned forward, his expression serious. You're right. That code you cracked, it's not just an academic puzzle. It's part of something far bigger. Something that's been protected for years, by people who will stop at nothing to keep it hidden. Malik's stomach churned. What is it? What does it mean? Dr. Carter's eyes locked onto Malik's, his voice dropping to a whisper. It's a key, Malik. A key to understanding something so powerful, so dangerous, that it could change the course of history. And now, you hold it in your hands. The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Malik swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. I never asked for this, Malik muttered. No one ever does, Dr. Carter replied quietly. But now that you have it, you need to decide what you're going to do with it. Malik didn't sleep much that night. What had he gotten himself into? The world he was entering was far darker and more complicated than anything he had ever imagined. One thing was certain, though, Malik couldn't turn back now. There was no uncracking the code, no going back to the simple life he had before. The question now was whether he could handle the responsibility, and whether he was strong enough to face what lay ahead. The next few days felt like a blur to Malik. Dr. Carter's words echoed in his mind, each one sinking in deeper than the last. A key. A key to something powerful, something dangerous. And now, that key was in his hands. Despite the quiet assurance Dr. Carter had given him, Malik couldn't shake the gnawing sense of unease. The more he learned, the less he felt in control. He had cracked the code, sure, but the more he unraveled it, the more complex it became. Each layer felt like it was connected to something bigger, something far beyond the world he had known. What was this key he had unlocked, and why was it so important that it had been kept hidden for so long? Malik's thoughts were interrupted when his phone buzzed again. Mia had messaged him. Malik, any updates? You've gone radio silent. I'm starting to get worried. He stared at the message, a twinge of guilt creeping up on him. He hadn't told Mia everything, not even close. After the meeting with Dr. Carter, he had felt overwhelmed and unsure of how to process it all. But he couldn't avoid her forever. I'm fine. Just, a lot going on, he replied. He stared at the screen for a moment, considering whether to add anything more, but decided against it. I'll tell you soon. Promise. Later that evening, Malik sat alone in his room, the glow of his laptop screen illuminating his face. He had spent hours rereading every paper Dr. Carter had sent him. The cryptic information about the code had given Malik only more questions, no answers. The code was part of a much larger system, a network of encrypted data that had been passed through generations of scientists, mathematicians, and cryptographers. But no one had ever cracked it completely, until now. And Malik had no idea why it was him. He was in the middle of reviewing a particularly complex sequence when a notification popped up on his screen. A new email from Dr. Carter. Malik, we need to meet again. It's urgent. I have more information about the people looking for the key you've unlocked. Be careful. They know you're involved now. Malik's heart skipped a beat. They know. Who were these people? And how had they found him so quickly? The email continued. We have to move fast. You need to be ready for what's coming. I'll explain more when we meet. Trust no one, not even those close to you. Malik's hands trembled as he set the phone down. This wasn't just some intellectual pursuit anymore. This was a game of cat and mouse, one where the stakes were far higher than he could have imagined. He hadn't realized the kind of danger he was in when he cracked the code. But now, it was all becoming painfully clear. The next day, Malik found himself walking through the familiar halls of school, but everything felt different. He felt like a target, constantly glancing over his shoulder. He tried to focus on the conversations happening around him, the usual chatter of his classmates, but it all felt distant. No one seemed to notice the weight that was pressing down on him, but it felt as if every pair of eyes was watching him, every word spoken carrying a hidden meaning. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jason. "Yo, Malik. You still in for that deal I was talking about? You seemed kinda off the last time we talked. You good, bro?" Malik hesitated. Jason had been persistent, but after everything that had happened, he couldn't shake the feeling that Jason's offer wasn't just about making money. It was about something bigger. Something that Malik wasn't sure he wanted to get involved with. "Yeah, man. I'm good. Just busy with school stuff. I'll hit you up later." Malik didn't wait for Jason's response. He needed to focus. He needed to keep his head straight. But the constant pressure of trying to navigate this new world was overwhelming. He couldn't afford distractions, not now. That night, Malik headed to the cafe where he had met Dr. Carter a few days ago. This time, he wasn't sure what to expect. Dr. Carter had sounded urgent in his email, and Malik knew that the people chasing the key he had unlocked were getting closer. But who were they? And how had they found him? When he arrived, Dr. Carter was already there, sitting at a corner table, his usual calm demeanor replaced with a sense of urgency. His hands were folded on the table, his eyes scanning the room before they landed on Malik. "Malik, good to see you again," Dr. Carter said, standing up as Malik approached. "I'm glad you could make it. We don't have much time." Malik sat down, his heart racing. "What's going on? Who are these people you're talking about?" Dr. Carter's eyes narrowed. "They're not just anyone. They're a group with resources, connections, and a vested interest in keeping the key hidden. They've been tracking the encryption for years, and now that you've cracked it, they know you're a threat. They'll stop at nothing to get their hands on what you have." Malik swallowed hard. "But, what is it? What's so important about the code I cracked?" Dr. Carter leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The code is part of a global encryption system that controls access to a vast network of classified information. Information that could change the balance of power in the world. Think of it as a vault, one that contains the most valuable secrets of every major government, corporation, and institution. But only a select few know how to open it. And now, you do." Malik's mind reeled. "Wait. You're saying, this code could control everything?" Dr. Carter nodded grimly. "Exactly. The people who want it are dangerous. They have the means to track you, to infiltrate your life. And you'll never know who you can trust." A chill ran down Malik's spine. For the first time, he realized the full extent of what he had stumbled upon. This wasn't just a mysterious code or a puzzle, it was a weapon. And he was holding it. "So what now?" Malik asked, his voice trembling. "We move quickly," Dr. Carter said. "We need to secure the code, keep it safe. And I'll help you, but you need to be smart. No mistakes." Just as Dr. Carter finished speaking, Malik's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Mia. "Malik, are you okay? I saw something today. I'm starting to get worried. Are you sure you're not in any kind of danger?" Malik's heart sank. Had Mia sensed something? Was she in danger too? He looked up at Dr. Carter, his mind racing. The silent pursuit had begun, and Malik was caught in the middle of it. Malik sat in stunned silence as he stared at his phone screen. Mia's message was simple, yet it carried a heavy weight. She was worried. She had seen something. What did that mean? Malik had kept her in the dark about most of what had been happening, but now it seemed like she was starting to notice the tension in the air. She had always been intuitive, and Malik wasn't sure how much longer he could keep her in the dark. "Who are they, Dr. Carter?" Malik asked, breaking the silence. He couldn't take it anymore, the weight of the unknown was too much. "Who are these people chasing after me?" Dr. Carter leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. They go by many names, but the most common one is, the Collective. They're a clandestine group of elites, powerful individuals with far-reaching connections. Some of them are involved in global politics, others in tech, finance, even law enforcement. They have eyes everywhere, Malik. And they don't take kindly to anyone who exposes the secrets they've worked so hard to keep buried. Malik's mind spun with the implications of what Dr. Carter was saying. The Collective. They were like ghosts, moving through the world unnoticed, pulling strings from the shadows. And now they knew about him, knew about the code he had cracked. But why me? Why now? Malik asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. He was just a college student. What could he possibly have that was worth the attention of a global network like this? Dr. Carter's eyes softened for a moment. Because you're the first person in decades to decode the system. The Collective thought the encryption was impenetrable. They thought no one would ever crack it. But you did. And now, the vault is open. There's no going back. Malik felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't equipped to fight some shadowy global organization. He was just a kid from a small neighborhood, trying to figure out what his future held. But this was a whole different world. I don't understand, Malik said, his voice growing shaky. How do we even fight something like this? How do we stop them from getting the key? Dr. Carter's gaze hardened again, and his voice lowered, as if he were speaking in a language Malik couldn't quite understand. We don't fight them head-on. We outsmart them. We take away their advantage. They're used to playing games in the shadows, making moves behind the scenes. But they can't operate in the light. Malik absorbed the weight of Dr. Carter's words. The Collective was powerful, yes, but they had one thing going against them: they were still operating in the dark. And if Malik could shed light on their operation, maybe, just maybe, he could turn the tables. Before Malik could ask anything more, his phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen, and his heart skipped a beat. Mia. Malik, I'm scared. I think someone's following me. The words hit Malik like a punch to the gut. He had been so focused on the threat to himself that he had completely forgotten about Mia. She was in danger now too. He had to do something. Fast. Dr. Carter, Malik said urgently. I need to go. Now. Mia is in trouble. Dr. Carter gave a slow nod, his face grim. I'll go with you. It's too dangerous for you to be alone right now. Mia's apartment was just a few miles away, but the drive felt like an eternity. Malik's mind raced with the worst-case scenarios. What if the Collective had found her already? What if they were using her to get to him? The questions kept piling on top of each other, and he felt a growing sense of panic. He couldn't afford to lose her. When they arrived, Malik didn't even bother with knocking. He rushed up the stairs to her apartment, Dr. Carter close behind him. He pounded on her door. Mia. Malik called, his voice tight. Mia, are you in there? He waited a few moments, but there was no response. Panic bubbled up inside him. What if she wasn't home? What if something had happened to her? Just as he was about to break the door down, it swung open. Mia stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. Malik, thank God you're here, she said, her voice shaky. I don't know what to do. I've been getting these weird calls. Strange people have been showing up around the building, watching me. Malik's heart sank. The Collective had already made their move. But how had they found her so quickly? He hadn't even told her what was really going on. How could they know about her? Mia, I need you to listen to me, Malik said urgently, grabbing her by the shoulders. You're in danger. These people, they're after me. And now they know about you. I need you to come with me. We have to go somewhere safe. Mia's eyes darted nervously around the hallway. But Malik, what's going on? Who are these people? Why are they following me? Dr. Carter stepped forward, his voice calm but insistent. They're part of an organization that wants control of something Malik has uncovered. You're caught in the middle of this, and they won't stop until they have what they're after. Mia's face paled. Control of what? What is it? What have you gotten involved in, Malik? Malik sighed, feeling the weight of the truth crashing down on him. I don't know how to explain it, but I cracked a code. A code that unlocks information, powerful information that some very dangerous people want to keep hidden. Mia stared at him, shock evident in her eyes. A code? That's what this is all about. Yes, Dr. Carter said, his voice steady. And right now, they know Malik has it. They'll stop at nothing to get it. Malik turned back to Mia, his voice soft but urgent. We need to go now. We can't stay here. As they fled the apartment and drove through the city streets, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see dark cars tailing them. But the streets were empty, too empty. The stillness only added to the sense of foreboding that gripped him. They drove for what felt like hours before Dr. Carter finally spoke. We'll head to a safe house. It's secure, no one can get to us there. Malik nodded, barely listening. His thoughts were elsewhere. What would they do to Mia if they found her? He couldn't bear to think about it. But as they turned a corner, Malik caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror, two black cars, moving fast, closing in on them. The pursuit had begun. The streets blurred in Malik's rearview mirror, but the black cars behind them were unmistakable. Two of them, sleek and dark, cutting through the night with an eerie precision. His heart hammered in his chest as the reality of the situation hit him full force. The collective wasn't just after the key anymore. They were after him. And now, they were coming for her too. Dr. Carter, Malik said, his voice strained, they're following us. What do we do? Dr. Carter's eyes narrowed as he glanced back at the rearview mirror. Stay calm, he said, his voice steady despite the tension. We need to lose them, but we can't do it on the main roads. Head for the alleyways. Keep your foot on the gas. Malik didn't need to be told twice. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, the car jolting forward as the engine roared to life. Mia gasped, gripping the armrest as Malik veered off the main road and into a narrow alley. The tires screeched as the car slid around the corner, and the sound of the pursuing vehicles grew louder, closer. What now? Mia asked, her voice trembling. Stay down, Dr. Carter ordered. They have tech, GPS tracking, cameras, they can follow us wherever we go. But they won't expect us to take these back roads. We need to lose them in the labyrinth of this neighborhood. Malik's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. He didn't know how long he could keep this up. He had never driven like this before, his heart racing, his mind frantic, trying to stay ahead of the shadowy figures chasing them. He whipped the car through another narrow alley, the walls on either side just inches from the sides of the car. The black cars followed, not hesitating for a second. They were relentless. We need to find a way to shake them, Malik said, his voice filled with desperation. Dr. Carter's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. There's an underpass up ahead. If we can get to it, we can turn off the lights and make a hard right into the service road. They won't see us then. Malik nodded, eyes scanning the road ahead. His hands were shaking, but he had to stay focused. He had no choice. He couldn't let them get Mia. He couldn't let them catch him. The underpass loomed ahead, its darkness offering a sliver of hope. Malik didn't hesitate. He veered the car toward it, the tires screeching as they sped under the bridge. The sound of the other cars grew louder, and for a split second, Malik thought they were going to crash. But the underpass provided a split-second advantage, and he swerved, pulling the car onto the service road. "Turn off the lights," Dr. Carter hissed. Malik's hands fumbled with the switch. He turned the lights off, plunging the car into near-total darkness, save for the faint glow of streetlights from the alleyways. His heart raced as he made the sharp right, taking them off the main road and into the shadows. He kept driving, not daring to glance back. He knew they were still out there, still coming for them. Mia's breathing was shallow, and Malik could feel the tension radiating off of her. "We're okay, right?" she whispered. "Just stay down," Malik said, his voice strained. "We'll be okay. I know this area. I can lose them." Dr. Carter didn't speak, but Malik could see the hard set of his jaw. He was scanning the road, his mind clearly working in overdrive. This wasn't just a matter of escaping, it was about survival. And it wasn't just about him anymore. They had to keep moving. Malik accelerated, pushing the car faster down the narrow, winding road. The black cars hadn't followed them immediately, they had to be confused for a moment. But they wouldn't give up that easily. They had the resources to track them, no matter how many twists and turns Malik made. But Malik had a secret weapon, the knowledge of the city's underbelly. He knew every shortcut, every hidden path that could give them a fighting chance. But then, he heard something that made his blood run cold. The unmistakable screech of tires turning sharply into the road behind them. They had found them again. "Damn it," Malik muttered, his pulse quickening. Dr. Carter reached over, grabbing the dashboard and pulling himself closer. "There's a spot up ahead, an old parking garage. If we can get in there, we can lose them for a while. It's the best chance we've got." Malik didn't hesitate. He swerved onto a side street, the parking garage looming ahead like a dark, concrete fortress. It was old and abandoned, perfect for a quick getaway. He slammed the brakes just before they reached the entrance, spinning the car into a tight parking space under the shadow of the building. His hands were shaking, but he didn't stop. He killed the engine and motioned for Mia and Dr. Carter to be quiet. They sat in the dark, breathing heavily, barely making a sound. Malik couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about him anymore. The collective was in pursuit of something that could change the world, and he had it. But they weren't the only ones chasing him. There were more enemies out there. More people who wanted what he had, and they would stop at nothing to get it. Malik glanced at Mia, her face pale and tight with fear. He reached over and squeezed her hand. "We're going to be okay," he said, though he didn't feel it. Not at all. Outside, the black cars pulled into the street, their headlights casting long shadows across the parking lot. Malik's stomach twisted. They were here, right outside. It wasn't over. It would never be over until the code was in their hands. "Stay down," Dr. Carter whispered, his voice sharp with authority. "And don't make a sound." They sat, frozen, as the sound of tires on gravel grew louder. The men were getting closer. Malik could feel every beat of his heart. The chase wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional. He was locked in a race against time, and there was no guarantee he would win. But one thing was clear, he couldn't give up. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. The silence in the car was deafening. Malik stared at the shadows outside, waiting for the inevitable moment when the pursuers would find them. He could only hope they wouldn't. The silence in the car was thick, suffocating. Malik's breath was shallow, his chest tight with anxiety as he watched the black cars through the cracked side mirror. The headlights of the vehicles gleamed through the cracks in the parking garage, like the eyes of predators on the hunt. Malik's fingers gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His mind raced, weighing their options. "Dr. Carter," Malik whispered, "what do we do now? We're cornered." Dr. Carter, who had been silent up to this point, nodded slightly as his eyes flicked over the parking garage entrance, scanning for any movement. "We don't have many options left. If they've followed us this far, they'll be thorough. They'll search the entire building. Mia's voice broke through the tension. What do we do? Are we just going to wait here until they find us? Her fear was palpable, shaking her voice. She leaned forward from the back seat, trying to get a glimpse of the outside world, but Malik gently pulled her back down. We don't have time to sit around and wait, Malik said, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. We need to make a move. Dr. Carter's gaze darkened as he turned toward Malik. There's an old maintenance tunnel under the garage. It's not on any of the maps, it's not even used anymore. I know about it because I've used it in the past to move around undetected. If we get to it, we can disappear. Disappearing sounds good right about now, Malik muttered, his fingers still gripped tightly around the steering wheel. Dr. Carter didn't waste time. He opened his door carefully, making as little noise as possible. Stay close, he whispered. And remember, they don't know about the tunnel. They're expecting us to run, to make noise, to draw attention. We're not doing that. Malik nodded, quickly following Dr. Carter out of the car. The cold air hit him like a shock, but there was no time to feel it. They had to move, now. Mia followed closely behind them, her breath shaky as she kept close to Malik's side. The parking garage felt like a maze, the shadows thick, the low hum of the fluorescent lights above adding to the eerie atmosphere. As they crept toward the back of the building, Malik could feel the hairs on his neck stand up. It wasn't just the fear of being caught. It was the sense that something was watching them, even when they were hidden in the shadows. Here, Dr. Carter whispered, stopping in front of an old maintenance door at the back of the garage. The rusted metal was nearly indistinguishable from the wall. This is it. Follow me. Malik took a deep breath as they approached the door. Dr. Carter tugged at a hidden latch, and the heavy door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that led downward into a dimly lit tunnel. The air down there was damp, musty, but it felt like safety, at least for the moment. Down here, Dr. Carter urged. Quickly. Malik led Mia down the stairs, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the narrow tunnel. The walls were lined with old pipes, and the faint smell of mildew hung in the air. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Malik couldn't help but feel like they were descending into another world. Everything that had come before, his old life, his safety, felt like it was being left behind. They walked in silence for what felt like hours, the only sound being the scuff of their shoes on the old concrete floor. Malik's mind was racing, but he couldn't focus on the chaos anymore. Right now, the tunnel was their only hope. As they rounded a corner, Dr. Carter motioned for them to stop. There's an exit up ahead. It'll take us out near the old docks. If we're lucky, we can catch a ride from someone. Mia took a shaky breath. How much farther? Not much, Dr. Carter replied. We're almost there. But just as he spoke, Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. His heart skipped a beat, and he pulled it out, half expecting another message from Mia, or worse, another message from the collective. But it was neither. It was a call from an unknown number. Malik hesitated for only a moment before answering. Malik, the voice on the other end was cold and smooth, a voice that sent a chill down his spine. I'm sure you've realized by now that there's no escaping us. We know you're underground. We know where you're headed. If you don't want to watch your loved ones suffer, you'll come out of hiding. Malik's blood ran cold. He clenched his jaw, trying to keep his voice steady. Who is this? The voice chuckled, a sound that made Malik's stomach twist. You don't need to know my name. All you need to know is that you're running out of time. The longer you stay underground, the more people you put at risk. Think about it. Your friend, Mia. Do you really want to risk her safety? The line went dead, leaving Malik holding the phone in his hand, staring at the dark screen. His thoughts were spinning, Mia. They were threatening her now. They were already one step ahead. Dr. Carter turned to Malik. Who was that? It was them, Malik said, his voice low. They know where we are. They know everything. Mia's breath hitched beside him, and she grabbed his arm. What do we do? Malik swallowed hard, his thoughts racing. We keep going. We have no choice now. They want me to come out, to give up. But I'm not going to make it easy for them. Not for me, and definitely not for you. They continued down the tunnel, the weight of the phone call hanging heavily between them. Every step felt like it brought them closer to a trap. But Malik knew one thing for sure, they couldn't stop now. Not with Mia's safety on the line. The end of the tunnel was in sight. Malik could see the faint light ahead, the distant glow of the exit, but as they approached, his heart sank. He could hear the sound of footsteps echoing from behind them. The collective wasn't just tracking them, they were closing in. Move faster. Dr. Carter urged. They're coming. They broke into a run, pushing themselves harder, faster. The exit was so close now, but so was danger. Malik's chest burned with each step, the tunnel stretching on forever, like an endless chase into the darkness. Just as they reached the exit, the sound of boots pounding against the concrete echoed behind them. They weren't going to make it out clean. The faint light from the exit ahead felt like the first breath of fresh air after a suffocating plunge into the deep. Malik's heart was pounding in his chest, his legs screaming with the effort to keep moving. The sound of footsteps behind them was unmistakable, pursuers closing in with every passing second. It was now or never. There was no turning back. Faster. Dr. Carter urged, his voice barely audible over the rush of blood in Malik's ears. We're almost there. The tunnel stretched out before them, the concrete walls narrowing as the exit came into view. But Malik could hear the footfalls of their enemies growing louder, more deliberate, and it sent a shiver down his spine. They were too close. The collective was relentless, their pursuit like a tidal wave that threatened to crush everything in its path. With every ounce of strength he had left, Malik pushed forward, his mind focused solely on that small sliver of light. He couldn't afford to look back, couldn't let the fear of what was coming slow him down. He had to get Mia to safety. He had to protect Dr. Carter. He had to survive. The exit was just ahead. Malik could already feel the cool night air on his face, a sensation so tangible it made him believe that they might actually make it out of this alive. But then, the unmistakable sound of a gunshot rang out, sharp and echoing through the tunnel. Malik's heart stopped. He felt a sharp pain in his side, a sudden jolt that made him stumble. His breath caught in his throat, and his vision blurred for a moment. The bullet had grazed him, just barely, but it didn't matter. He'd been hit. Malik. Mia's voice was a panicked cry behind him. Are you okay? He gritted his teeth against the pain, ignoring the way his side screamed in protest. I'm fine, he lied through clenched teeth. Just keep moving. But the urgency in Mia's voice didn't fade. No, you're not. You're hurt. I'm fine. Malik insisted, his voice harder than he intended. Focus on getting out of here, Mia. Please. Dr. Carter's voice was sharp and focused as he glanced back, his face grim. We don't have time to argue. They're gaining on us. Keep moving. Malik's breath came in short gasps, each step more difficult than the last. The pain in his side intensified with every movement, but he pushed it down. They were almost there. He could make it. And then, just as they reached the exit, the world seemed to explode around them. The tunnel was filled with the sound of another shot, and Malik ducked instinctively, feeling the rush of air above his head as the bullet whizzed past. The exit was just a few feet away now, a small patch of open air that promised freedom. Malik reached for it, his fingers brushing the cool metal of the exit door, but as he touched it, something slammed into his back. He was shoved forward, crashing against the concrete floor just outside the tunnel entrance. The air was cold on his skin as he struggled to push himself up. His vision blurred with pain, but he could hear the voices of the collective agents behind him, their footsteps heavy on the ground. "Don't let him get away," one of them shouted. Malik pushed himself up, his hands shaking as he tried to steady himself. Mia's voice was frantic as she shouted for him. "Malik! No!" But he couldn't stop now. Not when they were so close. He staggered to his feet, only to be met with the sight of a tall figure emerging from the shadows, a man in a dark suit, his face cold and impassive. The agent was holding a gun, and Malik knew instinctively that if he didn't move, he wouldn't be able to survive another shot. "Mia, run!" Malik shouted, his voice hoarse, his body shaking with adrenaline and pain. "No, I'm not leaving you," she cried. But before Malik could stop her, Dr. Carter lunged forward, grabbing Mia's arm and pulling her into the shadows behind him. "Move," he barked. "We need to get out of sight." The agent took a step forward, aiming his weapon squarely at Malik's chest. Malik felt his heart pound in his ears, the adrenaline surging as he tried to think of his next move. He couldn't let them catch him. He couldn't let them win. Without thinking, Malik shoved himself to the side, diving into a small alley that branched off from the main street. His muscles screamed with the effort, but he was too close to give up now. The agent fired again, the sound of the shot ringing in the air. Malik felt the bullet was past him, missing by inches, but it was enough to send him sprawling across the ground. "Get up!" Dr. Carter shouted from behind him. He could hear Mia's footsteps, both of them moving fast, closer. Malik pushed himself to his knees, the pain in his side almost unbearable now. But he had to keep moving. He had to keep fighting. And then, like a moment of clarity in the chaos, he saw it, a dumpster, half hidden in the shadows, its lid barely open. It wasn't much of a hiding place, but it would do. Malik staggered to his feet again, his legs like lead beneath him, and with the last of his strength, he crawled behind the dumpster, pulling the lid down over him as he lay still, hoping the agents wouldn't see him. He could hear them moving nearby, their footsteps slowing as they began to search the alley, their voices rising in frustration. "Where did he go?" one of them muttered. Malik held his breath, praying they wouldn't find him. Mia's voice was low but full of panic as she called out from the shadows, "Malik. Malik, are you okay?" Malik clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay silent. He couldn't risk being caught. Not now. Not after everything they'd been through. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the footsteps faded. The agents must have moved on, at least for the moment. Malik took a shaky breath, feeling the blood dripping down his side. His body was exhausted, every muscle aching, but he didn't dare let himself relax. "Malik," Mia whispered again, stepping cautiously from behind the corner. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, but there was a determination there too. She was ready to keep going. He slowly pushed the dumpster lid up, his body aching with every movement. "We're not out of danger yet," Malik said quietly, his voice rough with pain. "But we've got a chance." Dr. Carter appeared beside them, his face tense. "We can't stay here long. The collective won't give up." Malik nodded, gritting his teeth against the pain. "Let's move. We've got to get as far away as possible." As they moved deeper into the shadows, Malik couldn't help but feel the weight of the chase pressing down on him. They had escaped for now, but the danger was far from over. The collective was still out there, hunting them. And the worst part? They were getting closer. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The moon hung high in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Malik moved with a quiet intensity, his steps careful, deliberate, each one taking him further away from the life he once knew. The world felt different now, like they were living in someone else's story, a story where nothing was ever certain, where every step forward carried the weight of the past. He glanced over at Mia, her face drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes still sharp. She had been through so much, and yet, there was no giving up in her. Malik had always admired her strength, but now, as they walked through the dark streets, with the collective still hunting them, he could see it more clearly than ever before. She was more than just a survivor, she was a fighter. Dr. Carter, too, had proven himself time and again, showing a quiet resolve in the face of overwhelming danger. But Malik knew the pressure was mounting. They were out of options, out of time. The collective would be relentless. How much farther? Malik asked, his voice hoarse. Dar. Carter didn't answer immediately. He just kept walking, his pace steady but urgent. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. There's a safe house. An old contact of mine, a woman named Karen. She owes me a favor, and she can help us hide, at least for a little while. Malik's stomach tightened. He didn't want to rely on anyone else, not after all the betrayals they had faced, but he had no choice. They needed a place to regroup, to plan their next move. I hope she's trustworthy, Malik muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Dr. Carter shot him a look, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. She is. She's a former agent with the CIA. She knows how to keep a low profile. Malik wasn't convinced, but he didn't have time to argue. He had to trust Dr. Carter, for now. As they continued their walk, the streets around them grew quieter, the distant sounds of the city fading into an unsettling stillness. Malik's senses were on high alert. He could feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing up, the constant nagging sensation that someone, or something, was watching them. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a shadow, moving quickly through the alley ahead. Malik froze, his heart leaping into his throat. His instincts kicked in. Get down, he hissed, pulling Mia into an alcove behind a large metal dumpster. Dr. Carter, already alert, took cover beside them. The three of them huddled in the shadows, barely daring to breathe. The sound of footsteps echoed down the alley, slow but steady. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to be quiet. They were hunting. Malik's mind raced. Could it be a member of the collective? Had they caught up with them already? He had to know who it was. He carefully peeked around the corner, just enough to catch a glimpse of the figure. The man was tall, his dark coat blending into the shadows. But it wasn't just the man's appearance that made Malik's heart skip a beat, it was the way he moved. There was something familiar about it. A flash of recognition hit Malik like a bolt of lightning. No, he whispered, his voice barely audible. It can't be. But there was no mistaking it. The man in the alley wasn't just some random stranger. He was someone Malik had met once before, a former colleague from his days working with the government. A man named Derek Hayes. Malik's mind flashed back to a time before the collective had come into the picture. Hayes had been a trusted ally, a fellow field agent who had always seemed like he had his back. They had worked on several high-risk operations together, and Malik had thought of him as a friend. But now, seeing him here, in the middle of this mess, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Is it him? Mia whispered, her voice tight with fear. Malik nodded, his stomach churning. It's Derek. I don't know what he's doing here, but we need to find out. Dr. Carter's expression hardened. If he's working for the collective now, we're in even more danger than we thought. Malik shook his head. I don't think he's working for them. Not yet, at least. But he's definitely not here to help us. The man in the alley moved closer, and Malik quickly pulled back into the shadows, pressing his back against the cold brick wall. He could hear Hayes muttering to himself, the low hum of his voice just audible over the quiet hum of the city. What do we do now? Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Malik hesitated, his mind working overtime. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Hayes was a former ally, but everything had changed. If he was working with the collective, he wouldn't hesitate to turn them in. But Malik knew one thing for certain: he couldn't let Hayes see them. Not yet. Not until he knew exactly what was going on. "We wait," Malik said finally, his voice steely. "We wait until he passes. If we can follow him, maybe we'll learn something." For what felt like an eternity, they stayed frozen in the shadows, the only sound the distant echo of Hayes' footsteps. Then, finally, the footsteps grew fainter, and Malik risked another glance around the corner. The alley was empty. Hayes was gone. "Now's our chance," Malik whispered, pushing himself into a crouch. "We move. But stay low. We're not out of danger yet." They emerged from their hiding place, moving quickly and quietly, staying close to the shadows. The city around them seemed like a maze, each turn a potential trap, each street corner a new risk. But they couldn't stop now. Not when the walls were closing in. As they moved through the streets, Malik's mind kept going back to Hayes. What had brought him here? Was he still the man Malik once trusted, or had he fallen into the web of the collective? Dr. Carter's voice broke through his thoughts. "We need to get to the safe house, now." Malik nodded, pushing aside his doubts. They couldn't afford to waste time. If they didn't get to Karen's place soon, they'd have nowhere to hide. And if Hayes was truly working with the collective, they would have to face him head-on. But Malik wasn't ready to make that call just yet. Not until he knew for sure. As they rounded another corner, the lights from a small storefront flickered in the distance. "There," Dr. Carter said, pointing. "Karen's place is just ahead." Malik took a deep breath, but the weight in his chest wouldn't ease. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The door creaked open, and Malik stepped into the dimly lit hallway, his eyes quickly adjusting to the darkness. The air inside was cool and thick with the smell of old books and dust. The kind of place that felt like it had been forgotten by the world, yet somehow preserved in time. Safe. Secure. Dr. Carter led the way, his movements cautious but confident. Malik, Mia, and the rest followed closely, their footsteps muffled on the wooden floor. As they reached the end of the hallway, Dr. Carter knocked twice on a door, sharp, deliberate. The door swung open almost immediately, revealing a woman who was tall, with short, dark hair and sharp features. Her eyes scanned the group quickly, assessing them as she stepped aside to let them in. "Karen," Dr. Carter said, his voice low but laced with respect. "It's been a while." Karen nodded, her lips curling into a tight smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I didn't expect you to bring company. But I never thought you'd show up again, either." Her gaze flicked over to Malik and Mia, her expression unreadable. "Who are they?" "They're people who need help," Dr. Carter said, his voice firm, but with an edge of hesitation. "They've been through a lot, and the collective is after them." Karen's eyes narrowed. "The collective? Are you serious? That's trouble you don't walk away from." Malik couldn't blame her. The collective was a name that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who'd been in the field long enough. They were a shadow organization, ruthless and methodical, with resources that seemed endless. Getting tangled with them was like stepping into a pit of quicksand. The more you struggled, the faster you sank. "We're not looking for trouble," Malik spoke up, his voice steady, despite the fatigue weighing down on him. "We just need a place to lay low for a while, a chance to breathe." Karen studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly, as if weighing his words. "All right, fine. But I can only help you for so long. After that, you're on your own." She glanced over at Mia and then back to Malik. "If what Carter says is true, you're in deeper than you realize." Malik didn't argue. He couldn't afford to. They were too vulnerable, too exposed. The only thing that mattered right now was survival. The inside of the safe house was small but functional. It was clear Karen wasn't someone who cared about appearances, this place was meant for one thing and one thing only, staying hidden. The furniture was minimal, and the walls were lined with bookshelves packed with old files, documents, and what looked like a number of maps. A far cry from the lavish offices Malik had been used to in his past life. Karen led them to a back room where there was a table covered with maps and photos, some of which Malik recognized as high-level intelligence. But there was no time to get distracted. There were bigger concerns now. "Make yourselves comfortable," Karen said, her voice almost a command. "You've got a couple of hours before I make any calls. Get some rest, but don't fall asleep. We have to be ready in case things get dicey." Dr. Carter stepped forward, placing a hand on Karen's shoulder. "You're sure about this? The collective, they don't take kindly to people who cross them. They'll come for you, too." Karen's face hardened, but she didn't flinch. "I'm well aware of the risks. But I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Don't worry about me." Malik couldn't help but feel a flicker of gratitude toward her. In their world, trust was in short supply. Everyone had their own agenda, their own motivations, and most of the time, people let you down when it mattered most. But Karen wasn't like the others. She wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Mia, who had been standing quietly at the back of the room, suddenly spoke up. "What are we going to do next? The collective is still out there, and we can't keep running forever." Malik turned to her, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He could feel the frustration in her voice, the same frustration that had been building inside him ever since this nightmare began. He let out a long breath. "First, we need to figure out exactly how deep the collective's influence goes. What we've learned so far isn't enough. We don't even know if they've targeted us because of what we know, or if it's just random. The whole thing could be bigger than we think." Dr. Carter nodded, his expression serious. "And the clock is ticking. They'll figure out where we are eventually. When they do, we have to be ready." Malik turned back to Karen, the question hanging in the air. "You have any contacts who can help us get that information?" Karen crossed her arms and leaned against the wall, considering the question. "I know a few people who might be able to help. But it won't be cheap, and it won't be easy. The people who can get that kind of intel don't exactly work for free." She paused, eyeing Malik and Mia. "You got something to trade? Or are you expecting me to just do it out of the goodness of my heart?" Malik didn't hesitate. "We'll figure something out. Just tell us what needs to be done." Karen's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile forming on her face. "I knew you were smart. All right, I'll make the calls. But it won't take long before the collective catches wind of where you are. We need to move fast." Malik didn't argue. They had no choice but to move fast. As Karen left the room to make her calls, Malik sank down into a chair at the table, rubbing his eyes. The adrenaline that had been keeping him going for days was starting to wear off. His body felt heavy, every muscle sore and tight. He had to admit, he was exhausted. But there was no time for rest. "We can't trust anyone outside this room," Malik said, his voice low, as he glanced at Mia and Dr. Carter. "Not even Karen, not really. But we don't have a choice. We need her if we want to get through this." Mia nodded, though her face was full of doubt. "I know. But I don't like it. It feels like we're always one step away from being betrayed." "Yeah," Malik said, his voice grim. "I know what you mean." He paused, thinking back to everything they had been through so far. The people they'd trusted, the lies, the betrayals. But we keep moving forward. That's the only way we're going to make it out of this. The soft hum of Karen's phone broke the silence in the small room. Malik's pulse quickened as he glanced toward the door, waiting for her to return. The minutes stretched on, each one feeling like a small eternity. His mind raced with 100 questions, but no answers. They were stuck in a holding pattern, waiting for a break, for some piece of information that could give them the upper hand against the collective. Mia sat in the corner, her eyes flicking nervously between Malik and Dr. Carter, who was tapping his foot in agitation. They were all on edge. Even the faint light filtering through the blinds seemed oppressive, like it was closing in on them. Finally, the door creaked open, and Karen walked back in. Her face was tight, her expression unreadable. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I've made the call," she said, her voice steady but with a hint of urgency. "We have a lead. There's a contact of mine, someone who owes me a big favor. He's agreed to meet with us, but there's a catch." Malik stood up, his mind snapping into focus. "What kind of catch?" Karen looked at him, her gaze sharp. "The meet's happening at a neutral location. You show up, and you'll have to leave your weapons behind. No exceptions. If you don't trust me, that's fine, but you're not getting anything without playing by their rules." Malik felt the tension in his chest tighten. He wasn't thrilled about the idea of going unarmed, but they didn't have many options left. If this contact could help them get the intel they needed, they had to take the risk. "You trust this person?" Dr. Carter asked, his voice calm but with an edge of skepticism. Karen nodded, though it was a cautious motion. "I trust him enough. But remember, this is a transaction. We're not friends. He's not doing us any favors out of kindness." Malik felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. Every time they reached out to someone for help, the price seemed to get higher. But right now, the price was irrelevant. They didn't have the luxury of choice. "When and where is the meeting?" Malik asked, his voice low. Karen pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and slid it across the table. "It's at an old warehouse on the east side. The address is on there. It's a place called Riverfront Dock. The meeting's set for tomorrow night. Be there at midnight, and make sure you're on time. You don't want to be late." Malik picked up the paper, studying the address. His mind was already racing, calculating their next steps. "And the exchange, what are we supposed to bring to the table?" Karen's lips tightened. "You don't have to bring anything except yourselves. But be warned, there's no guarantee you'll get what you want. My contact doesn't work for free. The price could be anything, and if you can't meet it, he'll walk away." Mia's voice broke through the tension. "What kind of price are we talking about?" Karen hesitated, then met her gaze directly. "Information. Money. Whatever he wants. If he's feeling generous, maybe it'll be something simple. But don't count on it." Malik looked down at the paper again, the address staring back at him, almost taunting him. He couldn't afford to hesitate. They had no other options. "We'll be there," he said firmly, folding the paper and slipping it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you for the help, Karen. We won't forget this." She nodded but didn't smile. "Just remember, you're walking a fine line. The collective is everywhere, and they'll be watching. Don't let your guard down, no matter what happens at the meet." With those final words, Karen turned and left the room, leaving Malik and the others to process what was coming next. Silence fell over the room again, heavy and tense. Malik couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The collective had been a threat from the start, but now they were closing in on him and his team in ways that felt personal. Every decision was a gamble, every move a risk. And yet, they had no choice but to play along. "I don't like it," Mia said, breaking the silence. She was standing now, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "We're going into a meeting with some shady contact who owes Karen a favor. How do we even know he'll give us what we need?" Malik turned to her, meeting her concerned gaze. "We don't. But we don't have a choice. If we can get the intel we need, we might be able to finally get ahead of the collective. Or at least stay one step ahead." Dr. Carter, who had been quiet up until now, nodded in agreement. "It's a risk, but it's the only play we have left. We're running out of time. Malik rubbed his eyes, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He could feel the exhaustion gnawing at him, but there was no time for rest. They couldn't afford to make a mistake now. We need to plan, Malik said, his voice steady despite the churn of uncertainty in his chest. Tomorrow, we go to the warehouse. We'll go in prepared. We'll leave our weapons behind, but we'll make sure we have a way to defend ourselves if things go south. And we need to stay sharp. This isn't just about getting intel. It's about surviving long enough to do something with it. Mia nodded, but Malik could see the doubt still lingering in her eyes. It was there in her clenched fists, in the way her shoulders tensed whenever she looked at the door, as though waiting for someone to burst in. I'll keep watch while you get some rest, Dr. Carter said, offering a quick glance at Malik. I'll make sure no one's following us. Malik gave a tight nod and sank into a chair by the table, the exhaustion catching up with him all at once. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push the dark thoughts out of his mind. But they kept creeping back, gnawing at him like a constant, insistent whisper. Would they make it out of this? Or would they be caught in the collective's trap before they could even get the information they needed? It wasn't a question he could answer. But tomorrow night, at Riverfront Dock, he'd find out. And if they didn't make it out? Malik wasn't sure he wanted to know what would happen next. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the desolate streets as Malik, Mia, and Dr. Carter made their way toward the riverfront dock. The air was thick with the dampness of the approaching night, and the sounds of their footsteps echoed eerily in the silence around them. It felt as though the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Malik kept his eyes peeled as they walked, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. They were deep in enemy territory now. He could almost feel the weight of the collective's watchful gaze, though he couldn't see them. There were no signs of surveillance, no obvious tail, but Malik knew better than to think that meant they were safe. In their line of work, nothing was ever as it seemed. Mia walked closely beside him, her hands buried deep in her jacket pockets. She was tense, her shoulders rigid, eyes darting nervously around. He couldn't blame her. They were about to meet someone whose loyalties were uncertain at best, and the collective was never far behind. You sure this is the place? Mia asked quietly, her voice low but full of concern. It looks abandoned. Malik glanced around. The old warehouse loomed ahead, its windows dark and cracked, the rusted steel door hanging half open, as though inviting them in. The air smelled of salt and decay. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, isolated, far from any prying eyes. It's the address, Malik replied, his voice calm despite the knot in his stomach. Just stay alert. We don't know who else might be here. They reached the entrance and paused, taking in the stillness. The building looked like it hadn't seen life in years. The faded graffiti on the walls, the overgrown weeds creeping up the sides, it all added to the sense of decay. Malik stepped forward and gently pushed open the door. It groaned on its hinges, and they stepped into the cold interior, where the only light came from the moon filtering through the cracked windows. The warehouse was empty, except for the table set up in the center of the room, surrounded by chairs. At the far end of the room stood a man, his back to them, staring out into the dark. He was tall, dressed in black, with a hood pulled up over his head. The kind of person you couldn't read, whose silence told more than any words ever could. Malik couldn't see his face, but something about the man's stance told him that this was the contact Karen had mentioned. Karen's people, the man's voice cut through the silence. It was deep, gravelly, with a slight edge of suspicion. Malik stepped forward, his pulse quickening. That's right. We're here for the intel you promised. The man turned slowly, his face coming into view. He was older than Malik had expected, his face lined with age and experience. His eyes, sharp and calculating, assessed them with a quick flick before he nodded. You're late, he said, his voice sharp, though not unkind. But I'm not one to stand on ceremony. Apologies for the delay, Malik replied, trying to keep his tone even. He couldn't afford to show any weakness. You said you could help us. We need that information, now. The man gestured to the table. Take a seat. We'll talk business. Malik, Mia, and Dr. Carter moved to the table, each taking a seat. The air between them and the man grew heavier with every passing second. Malik could feel his heart rate increase, the tension palpable. The man didn't sit, but instead began pulling out a folder from a bag slung over his shoulder. He dropped it on the table with a heavy thud, the sound reverberating in the quiet space. Here's the deal, the man said, his voice steady but with an air of finality. I can give you what you're looking for, but it's not free. I need something in return. Malik glanced at Dr. Carter, who gave him a subtle nod. It was the same game they had played countless times before. There was always a price. But what could this man want that was more valuable than the intel they needed? What do you want? Malik asked, keeping his voice level. The man's lips curled into a half-smile, as though he had been waiting for that question. He slid the folder closer to Malik, revealing a set of documents and photographs. This, he said simply. I want a guarantee that this information will stay confidential. No leaks. No one else gets their hands on this. Malik studied the papers in front of him, trying to make sense of the hastily scribbled notes and blurry images. His heart sank as he realized what it was. This is collective intel, Malik said, his voice tightening. You're asking us to keep your dealings with the collective under wraps. The man didn't flinch. You're damn right I am. The collective has ears everywhere, and I don't need their attention. If you want that information, you'll keep quiet about how you got it. You'll keep my name out of it. And you'll make sure it doesn't get back to them. Malik felt a surge of anger rising in his chest. The deal was clear now. The man wasn't just giving them intel, he was asking for silence. Total silence. But this wasn't a simple exchange, it was a trade of trust, and Malik wasn't sure if they could afford to give that away. And if we don't agree? Malik asked, keeping his voice low. The man's smile faded. Then you get nothing. You walk away empty-handed. Malik exchanged a look with Mia. This was the moment. If they didn't make the deal, they would lose everything. Dr. Carter leaned forward, his voice firm. We don't have much of a choice, do we? This intel could be the key to stopping the collective. We have to take it. Malik nodded, his stomach churning. They couldn't afford to be picky now. Fine, he said, his voice steady. We'll keep your name out of it. But we need the information now. The man studied him for a moment, then nodded once, as if he had already decided the outcome. He pushed the folder closer to Malik. The documents inside are a start, the man said. But it's up to you to figure out the rest. The collective has a new project. One they're hiding from everyone. Get to the bottom of it, and you might find a way to put an end to this nightmare once and for all. Malik reached out, his fingers brushing the folder. He didn't need to look inside to know the risk they were taking. The papers represented a crossroads. This was either the beginning of their escape from the collective or the final step into a trap that would seal their fate. Malik grabbed the folder, shoving it into his bag. The man gave him a final nod, a silent acknowledgement that their business was done. Without another word, Malik stood, signaling to Mia and Dr. Carter to follow. As they turned to leave, the man's voice rang out behind them, cool and detached, remember your end of the bargain. No one likes a rat. Malik didn't respond. He didn't need to. They had what they came for. Now, they just had to survive long enough to use it. The air was thick with tension as Malik, Mia, and Dr. Carter made their way back to the hideout. The weight of the folder in Malik's bag felt like an anchor, dragging him deeper into uncertainty with each step. They'd made the deal with the man at the warehouse, and now they had the intel. But the questions were starting to pile up faster than the answers. What was the collective hiding? What had they discovered that Malik's team could possibly use to turn the tide? The streets outside were quieter now, the bustle of the city a distant hum as they navigated through alleys and side roads to avoid drawing attention. The last thing they needed was for the collective to track them down before they even had a chance to dig into the documents they'd just acquired. Dr. Carter, always the pragmatist, was the first to speak. We need to analyze the information as quickly as possible. If this intel is what we think it is, it could change everything. How do we even know it's legit? Mia's voice was sharp with skepticism. She had her arms crossed tightly over her chest as they turned another corner, her brow furrowed in concern. This could all be a setup. We've been played before. Malik met her gaze, his expression hardening. We don't have the luxury of second-guessing every move. Right now, we need to assume it's real. We don't know what's in those files yet, but we're going to find out. Mia nodded, though she still looked uneasy. They'd been through too much not to be cautious. But Malik's mind was already racing, thinking about what the documents might hold. The way the man had talked about the collective's new project made it sound like they were dealing with something far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. They arrived back at their safe house, a small, nondescript building tucked away in a quiet part of town. Inside, it was sparse and utilitarian, just enough to keep them off the radar. Malik quickly locked the door behind them, then motioned for Dr. Carter to take a seat at the small table in the center of the room. We'll go through this methodically, Malik said, pulling the folder from his bag and setting it down. His hands trembled for just a second before he steadied himself. This could be the break they'd been waiting for, but the pressure of the moment wasn't lost on him. Dr. Carter reached for the folder and opened it carefully. He pulled out the documents, glancing over the first few pages. It's encrypted, he muttered, frowning as he flipped through the papers. This is no ordinary set of files. Whoever put this together didn't want anyone getting access easily. Malik felt a knot form in his stomach. If it was encrypted, it meant they would need more than just brute force to get to the information. They needed tools, time, and expertise. Time was something they didn't have. How long will it take you to crack the code? Malik asked, his voice tight with urgency. Dr. Carter rubbed his temple, his face grim. It depends on the complexity. If the encryption's too strong, it could take days, or longer. But if I can get access, we might be able to find a backdoor. Mia crossed her arms again, looking between Malik and Dr. Carter. So we just sit here and wait? That's our big plan. Malik turned to her, frustration creeping into his voice. Do you have a better idea? We've got one shot at this, Mia. We can't afford to screw it up. Mia opened her mouth to argue, but Malik held up a hand, cutting her off. He wasn't in the mood for another debate. He knew how high the stakes were. We'll be ready. We just need to trust Dr. Carter to get us what we need. Dr. Carter glanced up at them both, then back at the documents. He picked up a small tablet from the table and connected it to the files. I'll get to work on cracking this. In the meantime, you two need to stay sharp. I'll let you know as soon as I have something. Malik and Mia exchanged a glance before heading to opposite sides of the room. The silence in the room was suffocating. Malik could feel his thoughts swirling, a mix of hope and dread tugging at him. If Dr. Carter could crack the code, they might finally have a lead, a real one, that could put them ahead of the collective. But if they failed? He pushed the thought aside. They couldn't afford failure. Not now. For the next several hours, the only sound in the room was the occasional tap of Dr. Carter's fingers on the tablet screen. Malik paced, his eyes occasionally glancing at the clock. They were getting closer to dawn. The weight of the night pressed on them all, but it was Mia who spoke up first. You've been at this for hours, Doc, she said, her voice low. Do you have anything yet? Dr. Carter didn't look up from the screen. I'm getting there. Just need a little more time. Malik took a deep breath and moved to the window, peering out into the dark streets below. Nothing was out of the ordinary. But the feeling of being watched never left him. It was always there, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Carter gave a satisfied grunt. Got it. Malik turned quickly, his heart racing. What did you find? Dr. Carter turned the tablet toward him, showing a detailed blueprint of a facility, one that Malik didn't recognize at first glance. It was an isolated location, hidden deep in the mountains, surrounded by dense forest. The coordinates were clearly marked, and Malik's blood ran cold as he read the accompanying notes. This is it, Dr. Carter said, his voice low. It's a high-security research facility. Classified. But the collectives involved. I think they're working on something big here. Very big. Malik's mind was already racing through the possibilities. This could be the project the man in the warehouse had mentioned. The collective was hiding something here, and it could be their ticket to bringing it all down. We have to get there, Malik said, his voice firm. This is our first real lead. We can't waste it. Mia stepped forward, her face pale but determined. How do we get in? It's a high-security facility. We can't just walk through the front door. Malik turned back to Dr. Carter. We'll figure that part out when we get there. But first, we need to prepare. This is going to be dangerous. Dr. Carter nodded, his face set in grim determination. I'll start working on a plan. But we'll need everything we've got, gear, intel, everything. Malik's mind was already shifting into overdrive. They had a lead, but it was a long shot. They couldn't afford to fail now. They had to be ready for whatever the collective was hiding. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The sun had barely begun to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange when Malik, Mia, and Dr. Carter set out. The air was crisp, the kind of early morning chill that made you want to stay hidden under the covers, but there was no time for comfort. The intel Dr. Carter had cracked open was far too important to delay any further. Malik's pulse quickened as they made their way out of the city and toward the remote facility they had found in the documents. It was tucked away deep in the mountains, a place that seemed to be designed to keep unwanted eyes away. The roads grew less familiar, turning from paved highways to dirt paths surrounded by thick forests. How much farther? Mia asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. Malik checked the GPS coordinates one last time. We're close. Just a few more miles. Dr. Carter, seated in the back of the van, didn't look up from his tablet. We'll need to approach this carefully. If the collective has been operating here for a while, we'll be walking right into a hornet's nest. High-security facilities don't just have guards. They have surveillance, automated systems, everything. Getting in won't be easy. Malik clenched his jaw. He knew the risks. But this was their best shot at learning the truth about the collective's project, and they couldn't back down now. They couldn't let fear stop them when they were this close to uncovering something so massive. The van's tires crunched over the gravel as they continued down the winding road, the trees thickening around them. The further they went, the more isolated it felt. There were no other cars, no signs of life. Just them and the looming mountain in the distance. Do we have a plan? Mia asked, breaking the silence. Malik glanced back at her. We get in, find out what they're hiding, and get out. Simple as that. Dr. Carter snorted from the back seat. Simple. Malik, you and I both know that simple never applies in situations like this. Malik shot him a quick look. I know. But we don't have time for complicated. We need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more likely it is that the collective will catch wind of us. Mia sighed and looked out the window, her arms crossed tightly. She wasn't thrilled about the plan, or the lack of one, but she trusted Malik. And right now, that was enough. Minutes passed like hours as they approached the foot of the mountain. They passed through a narrow gap in the trees, and there it was, an imposing, concrete structure that looked almost like a bunker. No windows. No signs of life, save for the small security booth at the entrance. There were guards posted, but they didn't seem to notice the van yet. "All right," Malik said quietly, pulling the van off to the side of the road, just out of sight of the facility. "We'll wait until dark to make our move. There's no way we can get in during the day without being spotted." Dr. Carter nodded in agreement, his face serious. "I'll go over the blueprints again. We need to know the layout of the facility inside and out before we make a move." Mia sat up straighter. "What's the plan once we get inside?" Malik glanced at her, his gaze hardening. "Once we're in, we head straight for the main control room. If we can hack into their system, we'll get all the intel we need. Dr. Carter, you're our tech expert. You'll handle the hacking." Dr. Carter adjusted his glasses, deep in thought. "I can do it. But I'll need access to their mainframe. If they've encrypted everything like I think they have, it'll take a few minutes to crack in. We can't afford to be interrupted." Malik nodded. "We won't be. We'll take care of security." The weight of the plan settled in. The night had fallen, and darkness was quickly enveloping the forest. There was no going back now. They waited in silence as the evening wore on. Malik's mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, each more dangerous than the last. But despite the fear gnawing at him, he couldn't deny the thrill. This was what they had been working toward, this was the moment that could change everything. They weren't just going in to steal information. They were going in to expose the truth about the collective, to stop whatever they had planned before it was too late. Finally, as the moon began to rise, Malik signaled to Dr. Carter and Mia. It was time. They slipped out of the van, moving as quietly as possible, shadows in the night. The forest was alive with the sounds of wildlife, but Malik barely noticed. His focus was on the task at hand. The security booth was still unmanned, and the guards were stationed in the distance, oblivious to their approach. The trio crept toward the edge of the facility, staying low and using the cover of darkness to avoid detection. Malik's heart beat loudly in his chest as they approached the security fence. A set of cameras swept the area, their red lenses scanning methodically. But they were on a timer. He had studied the pattern of their sweep and knew exactly when to move. "Now," Malik whispered. They sprinted across the open space, crouching low as they made their way toward a small service door at the back of the building. It was old, barely noticeable, but it would be their way in. Malik's breath caught in his throat as they neared the door. He could feel the weight of the stakes pressing down on them. One wrong move, and the whole operation could collapse. Malik reached for the door handle, his fingers brushing against the cool metal. He twisted it slowly, holding his breath, praying it would open. Click. The door creaked open, and they slipped inside, hearts pounding in their chests. The interior of the facility was dark, the faint hum of machinery filling the air. They had made it past the first hurdle. "Let's move," Malik muttered. "Dr. Carter, we'll need a few minutes to get to the control room. Can you start preparing?" Dr. Carter nodded without a word, already pulling out his equipment and prepping the tools he'd need to hack into the system. Malik and Mia moved ahead, taking silent steps as they made their way down the narrow corridor, keeping to the shadows. Every step felt like an eternity as they moved deeper into the facility. There was no turning back now. This was it. Malik's thoughts were consumed with the mission ahead, but there was a small voice in the back of his mind whispering a warning: they weren't alone. The air inside the facility was stifling, thick with the hum of machinery and the metallic scent of cold steel. Malik led the way, his footsteps quiet but purposeful as he moved down the narrow hallway. Mia followed closely behind, her hand resting on the handle of the pistol tucked into her belt. Dr. Carter trailed after them, his mind consumed with the technical work ahead. Every now and then, Malik could hear him muttering to himself as he prepared his equipment. "Keep it tight," Malik whispered, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the corridor. "We don't know how many guards are here. If we get caught, we're done." Mia nodded silently, her face serious, eyes alert. She was always ready for a fight, but Malik knew that even she couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation. They were deep inside enemy territory now, and their chances of success were growing slimmer with each passing minute. They passed several doors, each marked with a variety of codes and signs, authorized personnel only, and restricted access. They didn't stop at any of them. The control room was their goal, and they were determined to get there without attracting attention. The lights above flickered intermittently, casting long shadows down the corridor. Malik's instincts screamed that they were being watched, though he saw nothing to indicate immediate danger. Still, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. It was the kind of feeling he had learned to trust in the field. As they rounded another corner, Dr. Carter whispered, "This is it. The control room should be just ahead." He paused, eyes flicking nervously between the hallway and his tablet. "We need to access the mainframe before we do anything else. But I can already tell the security systems are much more sophisticated than I anticipated." Malik's heart skipped a beat. "What are we dealing with?" Dr. Carter let out a low sigh. "They've got a multi-layered defense. Firewalls, surveillance, motion sensors, and a few other things I don't recognize. It's going to take time. I'll need to bypass everything manually. We might be able to move faster if I can get into the system, but it won't be easy." Malik gave a short nod. "We'll keep moving. You handle the tech. We've got your back." Mia gave a small, quiet grunt in agreement, her hand still on her weapon. There was no turning back now. They had come too far to let any setback stop them. They moved in sync, making their way to the control room. The hallway opened into a large chamber, illuminated by pale blue lights that seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. The walls were lined with rows of consoles, each flickering with data. Malik's eyes quickly scanned the room, looking for signs of movement. But it was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. "Okay, I'm in," Dr. Carter muttered under his breath, fingers tapping rapidly on his device. "I've bypassed the first layer of security. But they've got a backup system. We need to act fast." Malik gestured for Mia to cover the entrance as he moved toward Dr. Carter. He peered over his shoulder, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. He didn't trust the silence. Mia's hand gripped her weapon tightly as she stood at the door, eyes darting between the hallway and the control room. She could feel it too, the pressure of being so close to something dangerous, the sensation of being watched. But there was no sound, no sign that anyone was coming. And yet, something still didn't feel right. "Just give me a minute," Dr. Carter continued, his voice strained with concentration. "Once I have access, we can get everything, security footage, internal files, anything. We'll know exactly what the collective is hiding." Malik nodded, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the unease gnawing at him. "Hurry," he whispered. Minutes passed. The rhythmic tapping of Dr. Carter's fingers on the device was the only sound in the room. Malik watched the clock ticking down in the corner of his vision, his eyes occasionally glancing at the door where Mia stood. He could see her tension, her body poised for action, waiting for any hint of danger. Finally, "Dyar." Carter let out a breath, a soft but triumphant sound. "I've got access. I'm in. Let's see what we've got." The screens in front of him flickered for a moment before coming to life, showing rows of files, security footage, and blueprints of the facility. He scanned through them quickly, eyes darting between lines of code and images of rooms he had never seen before. Malik moved closer, trying to get a glimpse of anything that might be useful. "This is it," Dr. Carter said, his voice filled with awe. "This is bigger than we thought. They're working on something massive, an advanced weapons system, maybe even biological warfare. There's talk of human trials, testing, everything we've feared. Malik felt the blood drain from his face as the implications sank in. They had known the collective was dangerous, but this was worse than he had imagined. Before he could say anything, the lights flickered again, this time a little longer. His instincts kicked in, a sudden, cold chill running down his spine. Something wasn't right. He wasn't just being paranoid. "Get ready," Malik hissed, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room. "We're not alone." Suddenly, the door to the control room burst open, and a group of guards stormed in, guns raised. Malik's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. Mia reacted instantly, firing at the first guard, her shots precise and deadly. Malik dived for cover, pulling Dr. Carter down with him as gunfire erupted around them. The sound of bullets ricocheting off metal filled the room. Malik's mind raced. There were too many of them. They needed to move, to get out. But with Dr. Carter in the middle of hacking into their systems, they couldn't just leave. They had to finish what they'd started. "Dr. Carter." Malik shouted over the chaos. "Can you finish it?" Dr. Carter's hands shook as he continued to type furiously on his device, his face pale. "I'm almost there. Just a little longer. Hold them off." Mia fired another round, taking down another guard, but there were too many. Malik knew they couldn't stay here much longer. "We need an exit strategy, now." Malik shouted, looking around the room for any sign of a way out. The guards were closing in. "Working on it," Dr. Carter said through gritted teeth. The air was thick with gunfire and tension. Malik's mind was spinning as he tried to formulate a plan in the chaos. Every part of him screamed to retreat, to run. But they couldn't leave without the intel. They couldn't fail now. The room felt like a war zone. Bullets ricocheted off metal walls and sparked off the floors. Mia's gunshots rang out, cutting through the chaos as the guards closed in. Malik ducked behind a console, his heart pounding in his chest. The sound of gunfire was deafening, but his focus remained sharp. He had to protect Dr. Carter, who was still hunched over his device, furiously working to finish the hack. Malik's eyes darted around the room, looking for a way out. They had to get out of here, now. The facility's security was closing in fast, and they couldn't afford to be surrounded. "Dr. Carter." Malik yelled over the noise. "We need an exit plan, and we need it now." Dr. Carter's face was pale, his forehead glistening with sweat. "I'm almost done, just a few more seconds." His voice was strained, his hands shaking slightly as he typed furiously. Malik's eyes narrowed. He didn't have a few more seconds. The guards were getting closer, and they were outnumbered. He looked to Mia, who had already taken down 2 of the guards, but there were at least 5 more in the room, and more likely outside. "Mia, how much longer can you keep them off us?" Malik asked. Mia didn't hesitate. She took another shot, knocking a guard to the ground. "As long as I can, but we need a way out. And fast." Malik's mind raced. The only way out was the same way they came in, through the service door. But that meant crossing open space, and with the guards on high alert, there was no way they'd make it without heavy casualties. "All right," Malik said, gripping his gun tightly. "We need to move toward the service door. Mia, cover me while I get Dr. Carter to safety. As soon as he's out, we'll head for the van. Do you copy?" "Got it," Mia said, her voice low and steady as she crouched behind cover. "I've got your back." Malik nodded and turned toward Dr. Carter. "Doc, we're leaving. Now." Dr. Carter gave a quick nod, his eyes wide with anxiety. He tapped a few more keys on his device, then slammed it shut. "I've got what I need. Let's go." Malik grabbed Dr. Carter by the arm and pulled him to his feet. "We don't have much time. Move." They sprinted across the room, and Malik didn't hesitate as he slid into the path of another incoming guard. His heart raced, and his body responded on pure instinct as he took the man down with a quick blow, knocking him to the floor. "Cover me, Mia!" Malik yelled. Mia fired off another round, dropping another guard, but the remaining ones were closing in fast. Malik didn't waste a second. He grabbed Dr. Carter and dragged him toward the service door, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. They reached the door, and Malik swung it open, half expecting an alarm to go off. But there was nothing. Just the eerie silence of the night air. "Go, go, go!" Malik shouted, ushering Dr. Carter through the door first. Mia followed quickly behind them, her gun raised and ready. They ran down the narrow service corridor, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent space. The exit was just ahead, but Malik's nerves were on edge. He kept his head down, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The door at the end of the corridor loomed, their only way out. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the building. Malik barely had time to register the sound before the walls shook, and a blinding flash of light filled the hallway. He was thrown off his feet, and for a split second, everything went black. Malik gasped for breath as he struggled to get his bearings. His head was spinning, and his ears were ringing. His vision blurred for a moment, and he felt the cold, hard ground beneath him. "Mia," he shouted, trying to push himself up. "We're okay," came her voice, breathless but strong. "Keep moving." Malik's eyes cleared, and he saw the door just ahead. The explosion hadn't taken out the corridor, but it had shaken everything up. He couldn't risk staying there any longer. They had to get out before the guards regrouped. With a renewed sense of urgency, Malik pushed forward. Dr. Carter was already at the door, trying to open it, but it was jammed. "Get it open!" Malik shouted. Dr. Carter struggled with the handle, sweat pouring down his face. "I'm trying." Then, a shout echoed through the hallway. Malik's heart dropped. The guards were coming, and they were closing in fast. They were out of time. Malik moved forward, his mind racing. He couldn't let them get trapped here. "Mia, keep watch," he ordered. "I'll help Dr. Carter." Mia nodded and took position, her back against the wall, scanning the hallway. Malik grabbed the door handle with both hands, his muscles straining as he yanked with all his might. It groaned, then gave way with a loud creak. "Yes!" Dr. Carter exclaimed. "We're in." The door swung open, revealing a small service yard on the other side, the dark woods surrounding it. The van was parked just beyond the yard, its headlights cutting through the night. "Move!" Malik shouted, pushing Dr. Carter ahead of him. "To the van." They sprinted across the yard, the air cold against their faces as they neared the vehicle. But as they neared the van, a shot rang out from the shadows. Malik dove forward, pulling Dr. Carter with him. A bullet grazed his arm, and pain flared through his body. "Malik!" Mia screamed. "Keep moving." Malik gritted through his teeth, blood trickling down his arm. He could feel his pulse thudding in his ears, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. They reached the van, and Mia threw open the door. "Get in." Malik, with Dr. Carter in tow, stumbled into the van. Mia slammed the door shut, and Malik shouted, "Go." The engine roared to life, and the van sped out of the yard, leaving the compound behind. The lights of the facility grew smaller in the rearview mirror, but Malik didn't let up. His mind was focused on one thing, getting out alive. They were headed toward the main road, but Malik's thoughts weren't on the escape. The explosion. The gunfire. The files they had stolen. Everything was still running through his head. But one thing was clear, whatever the collective was hiding, it wasn't just dangerous. It was something that could change everything. They had the information. Now it was time to figure out how to use it. The van tore down the darkened highway, the engine roaring as it ate up the miles. Inside, the tension was thick, suffocating. Malik sat in the back, his arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage, trying to keep the bleeding under control. He could feel the weight of the blood soaking through, but he didn't let it distract him. His mind was elsewhere, focused on the mission, on what they had learned from the data they had stolen. Dr. Carter sat next to him, eyes glued to his tablet, scanning through the files they had downloaded from the collective's servers. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp, focused. Mia drove, her face expressionless as she gripped the wheel with white-knuckled hands, her eyes flicking between the road and the rear-view mirror. They all knew they weren't out of danger yet. The moment they left the facility, the collective would be hunting them down. After what felt like hours, Dr. Carter spoke, breaking the silence. This is bigger than I thought. It's not just biological warfare, Malik. What they're working on here, it could change everything. Malik's stomach tightened. He'd known it was dangerous, but the weight of Carter's words hit him hard. What do you mean? What exactly are they planning? Dr. Carter's eyes flicked to Malik, then back to the screen. The collective has been experimenting with a technology that could rewrite the fundamental structure of life itself. This isn't just about war or power. It's about control. They've been developing something that could alter the genetic code of entire populations. Imagine being able to manipulate not just individuals, but entire nations. Malik's jaw tightened as the implications of Carter's words settled in. He had always known the collective was dangerous, but this was a new level of terror. So they're not just creating weapons. They're playing God. Dr. Carter nodded grimly. Exactly. And the files, they're scattered. They don't have everything, but I've seen enough. They've been testing their technology on unwilling subjects, using genetic alterations to control behavior, create obedience. They've perfected the process in isolated test subjects. But it's not just about control. It's about domination. Malik clenched his fists. His mind was racing, filled with 1,000 thoughts. The people in power were already dangerous enough. But if the collective succeeded in creating this technology, it could reshape the entire world. It would give them unimaginable power. Mia's voice cut through his thoughts. What's our next move? Malik looked up, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. The determination in her gaze was unmistakable. She was ready to fight, to do whatever it took to bring the collective down. We need to get these files to the right people, Malik said, his voice low but steady. But first, we need to lay low. If we go to the authorities, the collective will know. They'll have their eyes everywhere. We need to get this information to someone who can help us, someone who has the resources to take them down. Dr. Carter's fingers flew over the screen, pulling up another set of files. I can decrypt these files. They might have the key to the technology, how it works, how they've been controlling the trials. If we can get this to the right people, we might stand a chance. Malik nodded. And we will. But we can't afford to be careless. We need to be smarter than they are. The weight of the situation settled in again, a suffocating pressure. They had the knowledge, the files, the proof. But now they had to be careful. The collective wasn't a nameless, faceless enemy. They were an organization with power that reached deep into the world's political, military, and economic systems. Malik's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash of headlights in the distance. His eyes narrowed. Something wasn't right. Mia, he muttered, keep your eyes on the road. Something's off. Mia's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, her eyes narrowing. She didn't need to ask why Malik was suddenly on edge, she knew the stakes. But just as the headlights grew closer, another van appeared in the rearview mirror. We're being followed, Malik said, his voice low and tense. Shit, Mia muttered under her breath. She pressed down on the gas, pushing the van faster, but the vehicle behind them stayed close, closing in on their tail. "We're not losing them," Mia said through gritted teeth. "They've got the same training. They're not going to give up." Malik's mind raced. They couldn't afford to get into a chase. They couldn't afford to lead them to the drop-off point, not when the collective would have eyes everywhere. "Dr. Carter, can you hack their systems?" Malik asked. "Can you disable them somehow?" Dr. Carter shook his head, his brow furrowing. "Not from here. I'd need more time. I can try to block their signal, but it's not going to be enough." Mia swerved slightly, trying to throw off their pursuers, but the van behind them mimicked every move, staying close, relentless. "Get ready," Malik said, his voice firm. "We're going to have to take them out." Mia gave a sharp nod. "You got it." The highway was deserted, save for the two vans, but the threat felt like it was closing in on all sides. Malik grabbed his gun, checking it one last time. He wasn't sure if they would survive this, but he knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't let them take the data. Not after everything they'd been through. 3 minutes, Malik muttered, looking ahead. "We're going to take the next exit. They won't expect it." Mia's hands were steady on the wheel, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror as she made the sharp turn onto an empty road that branched off from the main highway. "They're still with us," Mia said. Malik's heart raced. They were running out of options, and fast. "This is it," Malik said, his voice tight with determination. "Get ready." They skidded to a halt on a deserted stretch of road. Malik barely had time to open the door before the pursuing van swerved toward them. The men inside jumped out, guns raised, but Malik and Mia were already on the move. The gunfire rang out, loud and furious. Malik dove for cover behind the van, his pulse pounding in his ears. He fired off a few shots, taking down one of the guards. Mia moved quickly, using the terrain to her advantage as she shot the remaining guards. In the distance, Malik saw another van coming toward them. This time, the backup was here. But they wouldn't stop until they were out of this alive. The night felt endless as the van sped down narrow, winding roads, the headlights slicing through the darkness. Every twist and turn brought them deeper into unfamiliar territory. Malik's mind was still racing with the implications of the files they had taken from the collective's facility. They weren't just running from the past anymore, they were running towards something even more dangerous. The information they now carried wasn't just powerful, it was a ticking time bomb that could unravel everything. But something didn't sit right. As they neared the safe house that Dr. Carter had recommended, the weight of his words still echoed in Malik's mind. "We need to trust no one. The collective has eyes everywhere." Dr. Carter had been adamant, and now, as they approached their supposed sanctuary, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they might be walking into a trap. "Keep your eyes peeled," Malik murmured to Mia, his voice low but filled with a sense of foreboding. "If this goes south, we need to be ready to move fast." Mia nodded, her hands gripped tightly on the steering wheel. Her face, lit by the soft glow of the dashboard lights, was set in stone, her expression unreadable. She was tough, no doubt about it, but even she knew the odds were stacked against them. Dr. Carter, who had been silent for the last hour, spoke up from the back. "I know this is hard, Malik. But I'm telling you, this is the only place we can lay low for now. No one knows we'll be there." Malik glanced over his shoulder, meeting Carter's tired gaze. His trust in the man had been growing, but the way he said, "No one knows," made Malik uneasy. How could Carter be so sure? He couldn't afford to let his guard down. Not now. Not ever again. "Yeah, well, if you say so," Malik replied, trying to keep his voice steady, though doubt gnawed at him. "But don't expect me to just walk in there with my eyes closed." Carter seemed to understand, his eyes softening for a moment. "I know. And I wouldn't ask you to." The road ahead stretched out into the black void of the night, and as they neared the intersection to the safe house, Malik's gut tightened. He didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. Something felt off. He wasn't the only one who noticed. Mia slowed the van as they approached the turnoff, her eyes scanning the surroundings. It was too quiet. "Malik," she said in a low voice, "we've got company." Malik stiffened. His eyes darted around, his senses heightened. And then, in the distance, he saw it, another set of headlights. The unmistakable, sharp beam of a vehicle approaching fast. Too fast. "Damn it," Malik muttered. "We're being followed again." "No," Mia said, her voice tight. "This time, it's more than just a tale. They're closing in on us." Malik cursed under his breath. He had hoped for a few minutes of peace, just enough to catch their breath and regroup, but it looked like the collective was already one step ahead. "Dr. Carter," Malik said urgently, "you sure this place is secure?" Carter swallowed, a flicker of uncertainty passing over his face. "It was supposed to be," he said, but the hesitation was enough to make Malik's heart race. "But we may not have time to reach it. We might need to head for the backup location I set up." "Where?" Malik snapped. He was done with the games. He needed a plan, and he needed it now. "Not far. Just keep driving straight ahead," Carter said, pointing. "It's an old warehouse. No one will think to look there. But we'll have to ditch the van." Malik clenched his jaw. They had no choice but to trust Carter's lead. He didn't like it, but he couldn't afford to make enemies of the only person who had the key to stopping the collective. "All right, Mia. We're going with him," Malik said, his voice commanding. "But you better be right about this." Mia didn't reply immediately, her gaze fixed on the rearview mirror as the headlights behind them grew brighter, too close for comfort. She slammed the accelerator down, and the van shot forward. "Hang on," she muttered. "I'm not losing them this time." The pursuit was relentless, the vehicle behind them not giving an inch. They had no idea how much longer they could outrun them, but Malik knew they couldn't let the pursuers know where they were going. They had to lose them first. Mia took another sharp turn, cutting through a side street, hoping the sudden maneuver would throw off their pursuers. It didn't. The headlights stayed right behind them. Malik's hand gripped the gun at his side, the weight of it comforting, but not enough. He needed something else, something that could give them an edge. His eyes darted around, and then he saw it, an alleyway up ahead, a narrow, dark passage between two buildings. It was their best shot. "Mia, take the alley," Malik ordered. Mia didn't hesitate, spinning the wheel to the right. The van shot into the alley, its tires screeching as it bounced over potholes. The vehicle behind them followed, but Malik could hear the sound of tires scraping against the walls. The alley was too tight for them to keep up without risking a crash. "They'll be off us for a minute," Mia said, her voice tense but relieved. "We've got some breathing room." But Malik wasn't feeling any better. In fact, the sudden shift in their fortunes made him feel worse. "Stay sharp," he said. "They won't give up that easily." They tore down the alley, the walls closing in around them. But just as Malik thought they might make it, the pursuing vehicle surged forward with terrifying speed, cutting off the alley's exit. Mia cursed under her breath and slammed the brakes. The van skidded to a halt just inches from the wall. Malik could hear the roar of the engine as the pursuing vehicle blocked them in, its headlights blinding in the dark. "Damn it!" Mia shouted, slamming her fist against the wheel. Before Malik could react, the door to the pursuing vehicle opened, and two men in tactical gear stepped out, guns raised. One of them was familiar. Malik's blood ran cold. It was Agent Stevens, the same man who had been chasing them ever since they infiltrated the collective's facility. The same man who had been with the team that nearly captured them days ago. Malik's stomach dropped. He should have known. "Carter," Stevens called, his voice cold, "you thought you could just walk away from this? You should have known better." Malik's eyes widened. It was a betrayal. Dr. Carter had led them straight into a trap. Dr. Carter stood frozen, his face pale. You knew. Stephen smiled, but it was a smile that sent a chill down Malik's spine. Oh, we knew, Carter. You're just too valuable to let slip away. The files you stole, those are only the beginning. You've been playing your part very well. He turned to Malik. And you. You've been an unexpected complication, but it's almost over. Malik's heart raced. Carter had been a part of the plan all along. He'd been feeding them information, and they had fallen right into his hands. You traitor. Malik yelled, his voice trembling with anger. You used us. Carter didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a deep breath, his face tight with regret, or perhaps it was guilt. I never wanted this to happen. But you don't understand. The collective is too powerful. I had no choice. They threatened my family. Malik's grip tightened on his gun. Your family. You sold us out for your own skin. Carter's eyes flickered with pain, but the steely resolve in Stephen's eyes told Malik all he needed to know. The trap was sprung, and they had just walked right into it. The weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air, suffocating them all. Malik's blood boiled as Agent Stephen's cold smile widened, and Dr. Carter stood frozen, his eyes betraying the guilt that gnawed at him. The tension in the alleyway was palpable, like the calm before the storm. You really thought you could take down the collective? Stephen sneered, taking a step toward them. The two other agents flanked him, their guns aimed squarely at Malik and Mia. You're nothing but pawns in a much bigger game. Malik's pulse hammered in his temples, his mind racing. The feeling of betrayal stung, deeper than any wound. Carter, the man who had been their ally, their only source of information, was in on this all along. He had led them straight into the hands of the enemy. Mia's voice broke the silence. You lied to us. You used us. We trusted you. Carter's eyes darted from Malik to Mia, his face pale with regret. I didn't have a choice, he whispered, almost pleading. They have my family. If I hadn't cooperated, they would have killed them. Malik's fingers tightened around the grip of his gun, the reality of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about betrayal. This was about survival, not just for them, but for the countless lives that would be affected by the technology the collective was developing. Then why didn't you warn us? Malik growled, his voice raw. Why didn't you tell us they were watching? Carter hesitated, then let out a deep sigh. I thought I could keep you safe, buy us time. But I was wrong. The collective is everywhere, and they won't stop until they have what they want. Agent Stevens stepped forward, his expression hard as stone. Enough talk. It's over. You've done your part, Carter. You're done. Dr. Carter's face crumpled, and he fell to his knees, defeated. The coldness in Stephen's eyes made it clear that mercy wasn't part of their plan. He had no intention of letting anyone walk away. But Malik wasn't going to let this happen. Not after everything they'd been through. He couldn't allow Carter's family to be the reason they all died. Mia, he said through clenched teeth, we don't have a choice. We fight. Mia didn't hesitate. She lunged out of the van, moving faster than Malik expected. She fired at one of the agents, her aim precise, the shot landing right between his eyes. The agent dropped instantly, crumpling to the ground. Go! Mia shouted, sprinting toward the nearest alleyway, using the shadows to her advantage. Malik followed, adrenaline coursing through his veins, but his mind stayed focused. They couldn't let Carter's mistake be their undoing. Stevens cursed, his hand going to his earpiece. We've got runners. Secure the perimeter, now. The other agent opened fire, the rapid bursts of gunshots echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Malik ducked behind the van, narrowly avoiding the hail of bullets. His heart raced. He could hear the agents closing in. This wasn't going to be easy. The alley was a maze of dumpsters and debris, but Malik had no intention of getting cornered. He and Mia ran deeper into the shadows, moving as quietly as they could, but the pounding footsteps behind them made it clear that time was running out. "Carter!" Malik yelled, looking back at the man still kneeling on the ground. "You have a choice, help us or die with them." Carter's eyes flickered with pain, torn between his loyalty to his family and his moment of weakness. But as Stevens' men advanced, the flicker of hesitation in Carter's eyes turned into something else, something fierce. He stood up, shaking his head, and ran to Malik. "All right," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Let's end this." Without another word, Carter grabbed a gun from one of the fallen agents and joined the fight. They moved in unison, Malik and Carter providing cover for Mia as she moved swiftly to flank Stevens and his team. The gunfire intensified. It felt like time had slowed down, each shot felt like it rang through Malik's very bones. His heart was pounding, and his hands were slick with sweat. But he didn't let the fear overtake him. This was their fight. This was their moment. With a final, sharp move, Mia fired a shot that took out one of Stevens' men. Malik followed suit, eliminating the other agent with precision. Stevens looked up in shock, his hand gripping his gun tighter. He was alone now. "You can't win, Stevens," Malik called out, his voice steady. "You're just a tool in the collective's game. You don't control anything. You're not the real enemy." Stevens' face twisted in fury. "You think this is over? The collective will never let you win. They've already won." Malik stepped forward, his gun aimed at Stevens. "Maybe," he said, his voice calm. "But we're not going down without a fight." In that moment, everything froze. Stevens raised his weapon, but before he could pull the trigger, Malik shot him. The man crumpled to the ground with a heavy thud, the fight finally over. For a long, tense moment, all was silent. Mia was the first to breathe again, her chest heaving as she exhaled, the weight of the last few minutes lifting from her shoulders. She looked at Malik and then Carter, her expression grim. "It's over," Mia said, her voice heavy with the realization of what they'd just been through. Malik nodded slowly, his gaze shifting to the fallen bodies around them. But even though the immediate danger had passed, the war wasn't won. Not yet. Dr. Carter looked around, his eyes filled with regret. "What now?" "We still have to stop the collective." Malik's face hardened with resolve. "We take the files. We get them to the right people. We make sure this never happens again." Mia, still breathing heavily, looked at Malik, then Carter. "How do we know we can trust anyone else?" Malik's gaze darkened. "We don't. But we can't let fear stop us. If we don't act now, then everything we've done here, everything we've fought for, will be for nothing." The weight of their journey had been immense, betrayal, danger, death, but Malik knew one thing, they had to finish what they started. The collective was dangerous, but they were not invincible. They were not the end. They were just the beginning. Months passed, and the world began to change. The files Malik and his team had risked everything to steal were passed into the hands of the right people, scientists, government officials, and organizations that had the power to take down the collective once and for all. But Malik, Mia, and Carter disappeared into the shadows. They had done what they needed to do, but they couldn't afford to stop running. The collective wasn't done with them, and they knew that no matter how much they had exposed, the fight would never truly be over. Still, as they moved forward, a glimmer of hope burned in their hearts. They had struck a blow against an unstoppable force, and in that moment, that was enough. For now, they were free. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?